Marvel. I'm Superman, and I start by living with Gwen Stacy. Chapter 76. The prototype of the armor I just developed is still in that villa. Pepper asked, "What's wrong, Tony?" "Someone seems to have blown up my villa. It's still unclear who did it." Tony took out his phone and dialed Jarvis's number. "Jarvis, immediately locate the villa, retrieve the nearby surveillance footage, and see what happened. Also, prepare the Mark 6 armor. I'm going to the site to check it out." "Sir, surveillance shows two individuals near your villa, Hulk, and an unknown black symbiote. Hulk is currently fighting the symbiote. The main structure of the villa has been destroyed, and the armor prototype may have been damaged." Jarvis's voice came through. "Hulk." Tony was stunned for a moment, then reacted, "Bruce Banner is in New York. And what is that black symbiote?" He didn't have time to think much and said to Pepper, "Pepper, you wait for me here. I have something to do. Be careful, Tony." Pepper grabbed his hand, her eyes full of worry. "Don't worry, I'll be fine, Pepper." Tony hugged Pepper, then turned and quickly left the restaurant. "Also, notify Lin Yi to come to my villa for a party." Boom. The smoke and dust from the villa ruins hadn't dissipated yet when a huge green figure crashed through a remaining load-bearing wall. Venom opened his fanged mouth and roared at Batman's retreating figure, black symbiote tendrils lashing out like whips at Bruce's armor. Bruce narrowly dodged, but a tendril grazed his shoulder armor, leaving 3 deep grooves on the alloy material, sparks flying instantly. "Peter, left." Diana's voice cut through the clamor of the battle. She gripped the Godkiller sword with both hands, her golden bracelets erupting with power to block a giant fist swung by the Hulk. Her arms trembled slightly from the immense force. The lasso of truth was still wrapped around Hulk's left arm, but its glow was already dimming, clearly struggling to withstand Hulk's brute strength. Spider-Man swung in an arc through the air, his web precisely sticking to Venom's ankle, attempting to pull him down. But Venom only sneered, abruptly turning and wrapping his tendrils around the web, forcefully yanking Peter out of the air and slamming him heavily into a pile of rubble on the ground. "Little bug, is that all you've got?" Venom's voice was hoarse and distorted. Countless spikes protruded from his black body, making him look even more monstrous. Peter struggled to get up. "This guy is even tougher than Sandman last time." The commotion from Venom and Hulk's fight was too great. Bruce Wayne, Diana, and Peter rushed over immediately to try and stop them, but these two monsters' combat power exceeded expectations, and they were directly drawn into a chaotic battle. Bruce's bat armor shoulder plate had fallen off, revealing the buffer layer underneath. He pulled out a freezing grenade from his waist and threw it at Hulk's feet. Ice instantly spread, temporarily freezing Hulk's ankles, but Hulk only roared, lifted his foot, and shattered the ice. His massive foot stomped down in Bruce's direction. Bruce quickly rolled to dodge. A deep crater was stomped into the ground, and gravel flew everywhere. "Mr. Fury, we need backup." Bruce shouted into his wrist communicator, "We can't control Hulk on our own." Nick Fury's voice came from the other end of the communicator, mixed with static. "Backup is on the way. Tony is rushing over, and Lin Yi has also received the message. You guys just hold on for a few more minutes." Bruce looked up into the distance. Shield helicopters were circling at low altitude, agents were evacuating nearby civilians, and the cordon had been extended several blocks away. He saw Hawkeye Clint leaning against a police car, holding a cup of hot coffee, casually watching the melee, even chatting with a nearby police officer. "Clint." Bruce shouted into the communicator, "Aren't you going to do something?" Hawkeye took a sip of coffee and shrugged. "I'm just a normal guy who uses a bow and arrow. Do you expect me to shoot an arrow and pin Hulk to the wall? Or shoot fireworks to entertain you guys?" He thought for a moment and added, "I'll keep an eye on these civilians and police officers, make sure they don't rush in and get themselves killed." Bruce. Nick Fury stood in the command vehicle, watching the chaotic battle on the monitor screen, his face as black as a pot bottom. "Coulson," he said to the agent beside him, "get ready to deal with the upcoming public relations crisis. Tomorrow's headlines will probably be about us again." "Understood, Director." Coulson nodded, holding a tablet computer, quickly jotting down items that needed to be handled. Relevant departments have been notified and are preparing to classify the incident as special biological runaway, to minimize panic. Just then, a familiar sound of armor flying was heard. Hulk and Venom didn't notice Tony at all and continued to fight wildly. Bang! Hulk broke free from Diana and Peter's restraints and punched Venom in the chest. Venom was sent flying but quickly rushed back, black tentacles wrapping around Hulk's leg, tripping him to the ground. Roar! Hulk roared furiously, slamming a fist onto the ground, which cracked open in a deep gash. Venom was sent flying by the shockwave. Tony saw Hulk and Venom on the ground and said into his communicator, "Jarvis, analyze the composition of that black monster." "Sir, the black monster is detected to be an alien symbiote with super self-healing abilities and extensibility. Its weaknesses are speculated to be sound waves and high temperatures." Jarvis's voice came through. "Sound waves and high temperatures." Tony shouted at Hulk and Venom, "Hey! You two, stop fighting here." Venom and Hulk simultaneously stopped their movements and looked at Tony. Venom bared his fangs. "Another one coming to die. Good, I haven't tasted steel yet." He leapt, pouncing on Tony. Tony reacted quickly, the armor's palm emitting a pale blue energy beam, hitting Venom in the chest. Venom was knocked back a few steps but quickly got back up, black tentacles attacking Tony. Hulk also stood up, looking at Tony with eyes full of anger, thinking Tony was there to deal with him. Tony, while dodging Venom's tentacles, shouted at Hulk, "Drive. Banner. I'm Tony. Tony Stark, Lin Yi's boss. I'm here to help you." Hulk was stunned for a moment, the anger in his eyes receding slightly, but he still didn't stop. He was currently blinded by rage and couldn't hear Tony, continuing to charge at Venom. Tony, helpless, wearing the Mark 6 armor, swooped down from the sky, his palm aimed at Venom. "Jarvis, activate sonic interference." "Yes, sir. Sonic intensity 50%. Expected to restrict symbiote movement for 30 seconds, Jarvis's voice came from the armor. Upon hearing the sound waves, Venom's body instantly trembled violently, and the black symbiote began to peel off, revealing Eddie's face underneath. Eddie said painfully, trying to control the symbiote, but the sound waves were too stimulating for the symbiote, making it impossible to concentrate. Now, Diana's lasso of truth exerted force again, wrapping around Hulk's right arm, and she shouted to Peter, "Peter, use your webs to secure his legs." Peter immediately reacted, spraying webs with all his might, wrapping them around Hulk's legs. Bruce, meanwhile, pulled out a tranquilizer smoke bomb and threw it at Hulk's feet. White smoke diffused, attempting to sedate Hulk. Hulk roared in the smoke, trying to break free, but the lasso of truth and webs temporarily restricted his movement. Tony took the opportunity to fly next to Venom. The armor's shoulder opened, and 2 small missiles were launched, hitting the ground next to Venom. The shockwave from the explosion sent Venom flying. "Almost there." Tony shouted into the communicator, "Why isn't Lin Yi here yet? My sonic device is about to overload." No sooner had he spoken than, accompanied by a tremendous whooshing sound, Lin Yi swept across the sky with Gwen, landing steadily in the center of the ruins. Gwen, wearing a silver-white spider suit, immediately shot out a web after landing, wrapping it around Venom's wrist as he tried to get up. "Sorry, I'm late." Lin Yi's voice was calm. He looked at Hulk, who was shrouded in smoke, his brows slightly furrowed. Hulk's rage had reached its peak, his green skin becoming even more vibrant, and his muscles had expanded a full circle compared to before. "Lin Yi, hurry and help!" Diana shouted, the light of the lasso of truth growing dimmer and dimmer. Her arms began to tremble, clearly about to give out. Lin Yi nodded, without a word, and charged directly towards Hulk. Just then, the smoke dissipated. Hulk saw Lin Yi, his gaze violent, and he violently swung his right fist, aiming for Lin Yi's chest. The force of this punch was enough to flatten a tank. "Be careful, Lin Yi!" Diana exclaimed. They all knew how terrifying Hulk's strength was. Although Lin Yi was powerful, directly taking Hulk's punch was no different from suicide. Bang! The moment the fists collided, a huge shockwave spread out, the ground cracking in spiderweb-like fissures. Surrounding rubble and debris were sent flying, and even Clint's coffee cup in the distance was knocked over. Lin Yi stood steadily in place, his right hand firmly catching Hulk's fist. The muscles on his arm bulged slightly, but he didn't retreat in the slightest. What? Everyone was stunned. Ding! Detected strong shock plus disbelief from Tony Stark, gaining 300 points of shock value. Ding! Detected strong shock plus vigilance from Bruce Wayne, gaining 280 points of shock value. Ding. Detected strong shock plus admiration from Diana Prince and Peter Parker, gaining 840 points of shock value. Ding. Detected strong shock plus apprehension from Nick Fury, Hawkeye, and other SHIELD personnel, gaining 3,500 points of shock value, SHIELD team bonus. Ding. Accumulated shock value reached 113,500 points, Superman Gene Awakening degree increased to 34%. System evaluation. Host, are you deliberately stealing the spotlight? Didn't you see Tony's expression, like he swallowed a fly? Taking Hulk's punch head on is cool, but can you be a little less flashy? Next time, remember to dodge first, then counterattack, otherwise, everyone else looks like trash. Hulk roared in anger when he saw his punch caught, trying to exert more force to flatten Lin Yi. But Lin Yi's arm was as steady as a mountain. No matter how much force Hulk used, it remained unmoving. Dr. Banner, wake up. Lin Yi shouted at Hulk, Betty is still waiting for you. You don't want to hurt her, do you? Hulk's movements paused for a moment, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by rage. He suddenly lifted his left leg, broke free from Peter's webbing, and kicked towards Lin Yi's abdomen. Gwen, help! Lin Yi shouted as he dodged the kick. Gwen immediately understood, quickly circled behind Hulk, shot out webbing, wrapped it around Hulk's other leg, and at the same time said to Diana. Miss Diana, let's fix his arm together. Diana nodded, and the lasso of truth tightened again. At the same time, Tony flew over, pressing the palm of his armor against Hulk's shoulder, trying to suppress Hulk's movements. Bruce, meanwhile, pulled out specialized metal chains and threw them around Hulk's waist, entangling his body with a nearby ruined pillar. Lin Yi seized the opportunity to step forward, pressing both hands against Hulk's chest, releasing all his strength. Hulk was pushed back repeatedly, his back hitting the pillar, and the metal chains groaned, threatening to break at any moment. Banner. Look at me. Lin Yi's voice carried a special power, causing Hulk's eyes to show confusion again. Betty is there, she needs you. Don't let anger control you. Hulk's gaze subconsciously turned to the distance. Betty was standing by the police car, her eyes filled with worry and heartache, her hands tightly clasped together. Seeing Hulk's gaze, Betty mustered her courage and slowly walked towards him. Bruce, I'm here. Don't be afraid, I'll be with you. Hulk roared, trying to push Lin Yi away, but Lin Yi's hands were like two great mountains, firmly pressing against his chest. Let her come over. Lin Yi said to Hulk, only she can help you. Hulk hesitated for a moment and finally stopped resisting. Betty walked up to Hulk, extended her hands, and gently held Hulk's large hands. Hulk's hands were huge and rough, covered with battle scars, but they trembled slightly at Betty's touch. Bruce, it's okay now. Betty's voice was gentle, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Let's go home together, okay? I know you're in a lot of pain, but I'll be with you, and we'll figure out how to control it together. Hulk looked into Betty's eyes, and the anger in his eyes gradually faded. His body began to shrink slowly, his green skin gradually returning to human skin tone, and his muscles slowly contracted. A few minutes later, Hulk disappeared, and Bruce Banner lay on the ground, drenched in sweat, breathing weakly. Ding. Detected intense emotional surge of empathy plus heartache from Betty Ross, gaining 2000 shock value key character bonus. Ding. Detected intense emotional surge of shock plus admiration from surrounding citizens watching via live broadcast, gaining 8000 shock value large scale group bonus. Ding. Detected intense emotional surge of shock plus gratitude from Bruce Banner conscious again, gaining 2500 shock value key character bonus. Ding. Cumulative shock value has reached 128,000 points, Superman Gene Awakening progress increased to 35%. System evaluation. Host, that emotional card was played quite well. But did you forget about Venom? Don't just focus on Hulk and neglect the villain. Also, Betty's tears are almost drowning Banner, couldn't you hand her a tissue? So unromantic. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief, helped the weakened Banner up, and said to the nearby SHIELD agents. Quickly take him to the medical vehicle and give him some nutrients. The agents immediately stepped forward, carefully lifted Banner onto a stretcher, and took him to the medical vehicle. Just then, Venom, who had been entangled by Gwen, suddenly erupted, and the black symbiote broke free from the webbing. Oh, I forgot about the little mouse. Tony immediately reacted, and the sonic device restarted. Without concerns about battery life, the intensity was directly increased to 80%. Venom let out a painful roar, its body trembling again. Lin Yi turned around, activated his heat vision, and two orange-red rays shot from his eyes, accurately hitting Venom. The Venom symbiote was instantly scorched, making a sizzling sound, and black liquid continuously dripped, revealing Eddie's body inside. Ah! My body! Eddie cried out in pain. He tried to control the symbiote, but the temperature of the heat vision was too high. The symbiote simply couldn't withstand it and could only continuously contract, eventually turning into a puddle of black liquid that fell to the ground, losing its vitality. SHIELD agents immediately stepped forward, collected the black liquid in a special container, and sealed it. Director, the symbiote has been contained and is ready to be brought back to SHIELD for research, an agent reported into the communicator. Nick Fury nodded and walked over to Lin Yi. Lin Yi, we owe you a lot this time. If it weren't for you, we would have had a hard time today. Just doing what needed to be done, Lin Yi smiled, his gaze turning to Gwen nearby, who was chatting with Peter, a relaxed smile on her face. Seeing Lin Yi's gaze, Gwen waved at him, her smile bright. Ding! Detected intense emotional surge of shock plus curiosity from Tony Stark, Bruce Wayne, and Diana Prince, gaining 4,000 shock value top-tier hero group bonus. Ding! Cumulative shock value has reached 141,000 points, Superman Gene Awakening progress increased to 37%. Basic Attribute Panel Update. Strength. 100 plus 12. Speed. 100 plus 12. Stamina. 104 plus 12. Reaction. 94 plus 12. Self-healing. 90 plus 12. IQ. 270 plus 10. System Evaluation. Host, your strength and speed have finally broken past 100. You can now directly confront Hulk. Next time you meet him, just punch him unconscious, don't waste words. A month later, Washington, D.C., Senate Military Committee hearing room. On the dais, 7 senators sat in a row. Senator Stern, in a dark gray suit, sat in the center with his hands clasped on the table, a microphone in front of him. In the first row below, Nick Fury, wearing a trench coat and an eye patch, sat alongside General Ross, impeccably dressed in military uniform. Tony Stark leaned back in his chair, twirling a pen, while Dr. Drake of the Life Foundation clutched a file tightly in his hands. Both sides of the hall were packed with reporters, and camera flashes flickered incessantly, creating a symphony of clicks. Lin Yi and Gwen sat behind Tony. Gwen wore a simple white shirt, her golden hair tied in a ponytail, occasionally leaning over to whisper with Lin Yi. Lin Yi appeared composed, his fingers unconsciously rubbing the serum sample in his pocket. His 37% awakening level granted him senses far beyond ordinary people, allowing him to clearly discern the breathing patterns of the senators on the dais and even hear the faint whirring of the recording pen hidden in General Ross's sleeve. Silence. Senator Stern rapped his gavel, and the hall instantly fell silent. Today's hearing on the Weaponized Defense Project primarily addresses the security concerns arising from several recent, special incidents, in New York, as well as the control over, special resources, held by Stark Industries and the Life Foundation. He paused, then tossed a document onto the table. The New York prison riot, the Green Goblin's rampage, Sandman's destruction, Venom's loss of control, the Hulk's devastation of the city. Each of these incidents has caused tens of millions of dollars in property damage and injured hundreds of civilians. And the root of all this points to the resources in your hands, Bruce Banner's Hulk gene, Dr. Drake's symbiotes, and Stark Industries' biological regeneration technology. General Ross immediately stood up. Senator Stern is right. If these resources cannot be strictly controlled by the military, they pose a huge security risk. Banner's Hulk gene and the symbiotes can be fully utilized to develop a new generation of super soldiers, giving the U.S. military an absolute advantage on the battlefield. Entrusting them to private enterprises or individuals is irresponsible to national security. The reporters immediately stirred, their microphones all pointing at General Ross. General Ross, are you saying that Dr. Banner should be controlled as a weapon? Has the military already formulated a plan for weaponizing the symbiotes? General Ross was about to answer when Nick Fury suddenly raised his hand. I object. All eyes turned to Fury as he slowly rose. Our duty is to protect global security, not to weaponize special individuals. Dr. Banner is a scientist, not a weapon. If guided properly, symbiotes can become a force for protecting civilians, not a tool of destruction. He had pre-prepared video footage projected onto the screens in the hall. The images flashed by. Lin Yi subduing Sandman, Diana confronting the Lizard, Spider-Man saving civilians. These special individuals have protected New York in multiple crises. S.H.I.E.L.D. is advancing the Avengers Initiative to organize these capable individuals into a systematic protective force. This is more effective and humane than the military's weaponized control. The Avengers. Senator Stern shook his head. Director Fury, are you trying to establish a private armed force not subject to congressional oversight? This is unconstitutional. I want to establish a force that can protect civilians at the first sign of crisis. Fury was unyielding. During the last New York chaos, if it weren't for Lin Yi, Tony, Diana, and the others, the losses would have been tenfold. The military's response speed simply cannot keep up with the speed at which crises erupt. The atmosphere in the hall instantly became tense, with senators arguing and reporters, camera flashes intensifying. Gwen quietly tugged on Lin Yi's sleeve. Will they really take Dr. Banner away? No, Lin Yi whispered, we've been prepared. Indeed, at that moment, Tony suddenly stood up, interrupting the argument. Gentlemen, instead of debating control versus alliance, let's speak with facts. General Ross says Dr. Banner is a hidden danger, so let's bring the hidden danger up and let everyone see if he truly is a hidden danger now. He gestured towards the door. Please summon Dr. Bruce Banner. The door opened, and Dr. Banner, wearing a light gray sweater, slowly walked into the hall. He wore a silver watch on his wrist, its dial displaying a blue indicator light that pulsed gently. Reporters immediately swarmed him, microphones practically shoved into his face. Dr. Banner, can you still control the Hulk? The military says you're a threat, what are your thoughts? Banner didn't answer, merely walked to the center of the hall and bowed slightly to the senators on the dais. Tony walked to his side, raising a hand to signal for the reporters to quiet down. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Banner's current stable state is thanks to the latest achievements of Stark Industries' biological regeneration project. He looked at Lin Yi. Lin Yi, give everyone a demonstration. Lin Yi nodded, pulling a small military dagger from his pocket. He walked in front of Banner, raising the dagger. Dr. Banner, forgive me. It's fine, Banner smiled and nodded. Lin Yi raised his hand, and the dagger lightly grazed Banner's arm. A shallow red cut immediately appeared, blood seeping out. The reporters gasped, and General Ross leaned forward. He didn't believe Banner could be completely stable. Pain was enough to trigger the Hulk's transformation. But the next second, the blood at the wound gradually congealed, and Banner's expression remained unchanged. Lin Yi smiled and said, the Hulk gene can rapidly repair superficial damage, and this serum can stabilize the Hulk gene. Ding. Detected strong shock plus disbelief emotions from the reporter group, gaining shock value plus 5,000 points, large-scale group bonus. Ding. Detected strong shock plus unwillingness emotions from General Ross, gaining shock value plus 1,500 points, key figure bonus. Ding. Accumulated shock value reached 147,500 points, Superman gene awakening increased to 38%. System evaluation. Host, you cut too lightly with that dagger, didn't you? Didn't you eat enough? Lin Yi put away the dagger and then said to Banner, next, please do a set of strenuous exercises, such as push-ups in place or running, for 1 minute, raising your heart rate above 150. Banner nodded and immediately began doing push-ups and running in place. His movements were precise, and his speed grew faster and faster. Soon, sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breathing became rapid. Tony had an assistant hand him a heart rate monitor, which was clipped to Banner's finger. The numbers on the screen climbed rapidly, jumping from 80 to 120, then to 150, 160, and finally stabilizing at 165. Heart rate 165, already reaching the limit of strenuous exercise. Tony said into the microphone. Everyone can see Dr. Banner's state. There are no signs of transformation, and his emotions are very stable. The reporters crowded forward, their cameras focused on Banner's face. Although he was panting, his eyes were clear, without any trace of the Hulk's ferocity. Senator Stern frowned. If he's given enough mental pressure, can he still remain stable? Tony spread his hands with an, "I knew it," expression, eliciting laughter from those around him, then called out to the door, "Miss Betty, it's your turn." The door opened again, and Betty Ross, dressed in a beige dress, hurried into the hall. She walked up to Banner, put her hands on her hips, and said loudly, "Bruce Banner. I've thought about it for a long time, we're not right for each other, let's break up." The hall instantly fell silent, followed by a burst of laughter. Banner was surprised at first, then smiled and said, "Betty, whatever it is, let's talk about it later, the hearing is still live." "No, I want to say it now." Betty glared at him, "I want to break up. You're always busy with experiments and never have time for me, and you turn into a big green monster and cause destruction. I've had enough." Even so, Banner's heart rate remained stable at around 160, and the blue indicator light on his watch showed no change. Banner helplessly ruffled Betty's hair. Betty couldn't help but laugh and threw herself into Banner's arms. "All right, I can't keep acting. Bruce is really stable now. I'm with him every day, and he's never lost control." Ding. Detected strong shock plus relief emotions from the group of senators. Gained shock value plus 6,000 points, elite group bonus. Ding. Detected strong shock plus satisfaction emotions from Nick Fury. Gained shock value plus 2,000 points, key figure bonus. Ding. Detected strong shock plus reassurance emotions from the live audience via broadcast. Gained shock value plus 8,000 points, large scale group bonus. Ding. Accumulated shock value reached 163,500 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 39%. System evaluation. Betty's acting is terrible. General Ross is furious. Look at how he's clenching his fists, he's almost crushing the table. General Ross's face was ashen. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Banner. This is all an act. If there's a real crisis, like someone trying to hurt Betty, can he still remain stable? General Ross, you can try. Lin Yi suddenly spoke. You can rush towards Betty right now and see if Banner transforms. But I must remind you, Dr. Banner is very stable now, but I might not be. If you harm Betty, I will stop you immediately. Ross was stunned, opened his mouth, but ultimately sat down. He couldn't use his daughter to cause trouble. Senator Stern watched this scene, knowing that it was useless to dwell on Banner's issue, so he turned his attention to Dr. Drake. Dr. Drake, Stark Industries has proven Banner's stability, but what about your symbiotes? Last time Venom lost control and caused massive destruction. Can you guarantee that the remaining symbiotes won't cause problems again? Dr. Drake's body stiffened. He looked up at Tony, but found that Tony wasn't even looking at him. Stark Industries was wealthy and capable of standing up to the military, but the Life Foundation was only a medium-sized company and couldn't withstand pressure from Congress and the military. He tremblingly picked up the file bag. I am willing to hand over the remaining 4 symbiotes to an institution designated by Congress for control. That's right. Senator Stern nodded in satisfaction. The military will establish a special laboratory to, properly, research the symbiotes and ensure they no longer pose a threat to society. Reporters immediately surrounded Drake, and microphones were once again thrust in front of him. Dr. Drake, are you giving up the symbiotes due to military pressure? Will the Life Foundation be transitioning to a new business model? Drake didn't answer, just lowered his head and quickly walked out of the hall. Just then, Lin Yi suddenly felt a surge of power in his body, and the system's prompt sounded in his mind. Ding. Detected chain shock emotions. Reporters, congressmen, military, public caused by the entire hearing. Cumulative additional shock value plus 28,000 points. Ding. Accumulated shock value reached 191,500 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 40%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength 109 plus 9. Speed 109 plus 9. Endurance 113 plus 9. Reaction 103 plus 9. Self-healing 99 plus 9. IQ 270, unchanged. New functions unlocked. 1. Super Hearing Advanced can monitor all sounds within a 10 km radius, can filter out noise, accurately locate sound sources, no duration limit can be actively turned off. 1. Material Analysis Elementary can analyze the molecular structure, component ratio, and potential properties of objects through touch or visual scan, duration 30 seconds, cooldown 10 minutes. System Evaluation. Host finally reached 40%. Unlocked Super Hearing. Now it's convenient for eavesdropping in class and listening to gossip, but what's the use of elementary material analysis? Is it for appraising jewelry? Keep working hard to upgrade your skills. Lin Yi quietly clenched his fists, feeling the stronger power within his body. The moment Super Hearing activated, he could clearly hear the conversations of the security guards outside the hall, and even the honking of cars on a street 10 kilometers away. The material analysis ability was also quietly operating. He looked at Tony's armor, and a set of data immediately appeared before his eyes. Titanium alloy 80%, vibranium 5%, carbon fiber 15%, surface coating contains anti-corrosion components, core energy is a new element reactor. The hearing gradually drew to a close, and Senator Stern announced. Given that Stark Industries has proven Dr. Banner's stability, he is permitted to continue his research under the supervision of Stark Industries. The Life Foundation must transfer the remaining symbiotes within 1 week. SHIELD's Avengers Initiative plan must submit a detailed proposal for congressional review before proceeding. After the meeting, reporters surrounded Tony and Lin Yi, with questions pouring in. Mr. Stark, who exactly will be included in the Avengers Initiative? Mr. Lin Yi, will the serum you developed be mass-produced for other similar situations? Tony casually dealt with the reporters, while Lin Yi pulled Gwen and quietly left through a side door. Gwen kissed Lin Yi on the lips. Mr. Lin, you were amazing just now. Thank you for your praise, Miss Gwen. Lin Yi smiled and ruffled her hair. Let's go pick up Banner and Betty and have lunch together to celebrate. Can you carry me, Mr. Lin? Haven't you already jumped on me, Miss Gwen? What do you do if you have to pee when you're on fire? Oh, that would be so cool, like a flamethrower. A little boy named Danny asks Johnny Blaze in Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance 2011. The trunk of the Lincoln was filled with groceries. Gwen had picked out vacuum-sealed braised meats and stewed duck tongues. Betty had chosen fresh fruit and whole wheat bread. Banner was carrying several cases of beer and mineral water, and Lin Yi had casually grabbed 2 bags of tea, eggs and soy milk. As soon as the car drove out of the supermarket parking lot on the outskirts of Washington, Gwen eagerly tore open a bag of braised meat and held it to Lin Yi's mouth. Try this. We bought it in Chinatown last time, and you said it was delicious. Lin Yi took a bite, and the savory flavor spread in his mouth. He smiled and nodded. That's right, it's still the same taste. My girlfriend is so thoughtful. Of course. Gwen proudly raised her chin and offered another piece to Betty in the passenger seat. Betty, you try it too. It's Chinese braised meat, a bit different from what you usually eat. Betty took it, tasted a bite, and her eyes lit up. It's really delicious, even more fragrant than the smoked meat my chef makes. Bruce, do you want to try some? She turned to look at Banner, who was driving, and reached out a piece. Banner took it with one hand, still joking with Lin Yi. Lin Yi, your way of repaying kindness is too cruel. Making me drive the whole way. Aren't you afraid I'll get tired and accidentally drive the car into a field? What's there to be afraid of? Lin Yi leaned back in the rear seat, leisurely drinking soy milk. If we really drive into a ditch, you can just let the Hulk come out and lift the car. It'll be a good chance for us to experience superhuman towing service. That won't do, Banner said, shaking his head with a smile. If the Hulk drives, he'll probably break the steering wheel, and then we'll have to walk all the way back to New York. Betty patted Banner's shoulder. Don't worry. Bruce is a great driver. Last time we went camping in the countryside, he drove for 4 hours without any problems. Banner. Lin Yi leaned forward and looked out the window. In the distance were vast green fields, and by the roadside was a small rest stop with a few cars parked and a wooden bench. There's a rest stop ahead. Let's pull over there for a bit and stretch our legs. The Lincoln parked in the shade of a tree at the rest stop. Betty sat on the bench, holding her guitar. A gentle breeze blew, ruffling Betty's long hair. She tuned the strings, and her fingertips lightly plucked, a lively melody flowing out. Almost heaven, West Virginia. Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees. Younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home. To the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Take me home, country roads. Take me home, country roads, 1971. Gwen immediately began humming along, her voice clear and forming a perfect harmony with Betty's gentle tone. Lin Yi also tapped his foot lightly to the rhythm, while Banner took a few cans of beer from the car and distributed them. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the leaves, falling on Betty's guitar. The melody and singing drifted far on the wind, and passing drivers couldn't help but slow down and look at them. They stopped and started along the way, and by the time they were approaching New York, it was already dark. As Lin Yi and the others were chatting, a sudden scream came from ahead. Banner immediately slowed down, and Lin Yi looked up. A red car was parked by the roadside. A woman in a dress was surrounded by 3 thugs. One thug held a knife, another was snatching her bag, and a third was egging them on. The woman's wallet and phone were scattered on the ground. Stop the car, Lin Yi immediately said. Banner quickly slammed on the brakes, and the Lincoln stopped less than 10 meters from the thugs. Lin Yi pushed open the car door, about to get out, when Gwen grabbed his arm. Be careful, they have a knife. Don't worry, it's fine. Lin Yi smiled, patted Gwen's hand. You guys wait in the car, I'll go take a look. Gwen then remembered that Lin Yi was someone who could contend with the Hulk, so dealing with a few thugs would be too easy. She awkwardly withdrew her hand. As soon as he stepped out of the car, he felt a scorching heat behind him, as if a ball of fire was approaching. The wind carried a faint smell of sulfur, and the roar of a motorcycle engine. It wasn't the sound of an ordinary motorcycle, but rather like a beast's roar, carrying deafening power. Lin Yi whipped his head around. At the end of the road, a streak of flame cut through the darkness. A black motorcycle, its wheels trailing a long fiery tail, like a war chariot driven out of hell. The rider wore black leather, the metal studs on his jacket gleaming coldly in the firelight, and his head was not a human head, but a skull burning with an eerie blue flame. Flames erupted from the skull's eye sockets and nasal cavity, flickering with his breathing, as if alive. What is that? Gwen in the car cried out, and Betty and Banner also crowded to the car window, their faces filled with shock. Ghost Rider did not slow down. The motorcycle, like a black lightning bolt, charged towards the thugs. When he was still 5 meters from the thugs, he suddenly raised his right hand, and a jet of flame shot from his palm, accurately striking the hand of the thug holding the knife. Ah! My hand! The thug screamed, the knife falling to the ground, his palm charred by the flames. The other 2 thugs were startled. Just as they were about to flee, Ghost Rider's motorcycle had already rushed in front of them. He kicked the thug who was snatching the bag, sending him flying like a rag doll. The thug crashed into a tree by the roadside and passed out. The remaining thug, who had been egging them on, was so scared his legs gave out. He collapsed on the ground, staring at Ghost Rider's burning skull, muttering incessantly, "Devil, you are the devil." Ghost Rider dismounted from his motorcycle. With each step, the ground beneath his feet seemed to be scorched, leaving behind footprints with sparks. He walked to the thug lying on the ground, bent down, and brought his burning skull close to the thug's face. His voice was hoarse and cold, as if from the abyss. You are guilty. He raised his hand and pressed his palm on the thug's forehead. Look into my eyes. Instantly, the thug's eyes filled with terror. His body began to convulse, foam came from his mouth, and the expression on his face twisted to the extreme, as if he had seen the most terrifying sight. A few seconds later, the thug's body went limp, and he stopped breathing. His eyes had turned into 2 lumps of charcoal. Ghost Rider, with his penance stare, could see a person's sins and then use those sins to destroy the person. Ghost Rider turned to the other 2 thugs who were still alive. He walked to the thug who had been burned, similarly pressed his head, and activated the penance stare again. The thug's body trembled violently, and he too soon stopped breathing. As for the thug who had passed out, Ghost Rider merely glanced at him before turning back to his motorcycle. Perhaps, in his view, his sins were not enough to warrant an end to his life by the penance stare. The woman who had been rescued was already paralyzed with fear, her face pale, unable to speak. Lin Yi walked to her side and offered her a bottle of water. Are you all right? The woman took the water, drank a trembling sip, and then managed to say, I'm fine, thank you, and that gentleman with the fire. Just then, Ghost Rider started his motorcycle, and the fiery tail lit up again. Lin Yi quickly walked to the motorcycle and looked up at the burning skull. Are you Johnny Blaze? Ghost Rider's skull turned, its burning eye sockets staring at Lin Yi. After a few seconds, he spoke in a hoarse voice. It is I. Where are you going? Lin Yi pressed. A barely perceptible warmth seemed to enter Ghost Rider's voice. To my girlfriend's date. With that, he twisted the throttle. The motorcycle let out a roar, trailing a long fiery tail, and disappeared into the darkness at the end of the road, leaving only a faint smell of sulfur in the air and unextinguished sparks on the ground. Lin Yi stood rooted, watching the direction where Ghost Rider had disappeared, silent. Ding. Host has come into contact with key character, Johnny Blaze. Ghost Rider, triggering hidden plot, the deterrence of the penance stare. Ding. Gwen Stacy, Bruce Banner, and Betty Ross have generated strong shock plus fear emotions, gaining plus 6,000 shock points. Key character group bonus. Ding. The rescued lady has generated strong shock plus gratitude emotions, gaining plus 1,500 shock points. Key event witness bonus. Ding. Drivers of passing vehicles have generated strong shock plus disbelief emotions, gaining plus 3,000 shock points. Group bonus. Ding. Accumulated shock points have reached 202,000, and Superman Gene Awakening has increased to 41%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength 112 plus 3. Speed 112 plus 3. Endurance 116 plus 3. Reaction 106 plus 3. Self-healing 102 plus 3. IQ 270 unchanged. System evaluation. Host, your luck is pretty good, you actually met Ghost Rider. But you were so close to him just now, weren't you afraid of being hit by his penance stare? What if you had stepped on a few ants before and he considered that a sin? Then you would have been in trouble. We danced. Steve Rogers, Avengers, Endgame 2019. Early morning, Central Park, New York. The morning mist hadn't completely dispersed, and sunlight filtered through the sycamore leaves, casting dappled light on the lawn. Lin Yi, dressed in a gray tracksuit, hands in his pockets, looked at the joggers in the distance with a helpless expression. He had just run 30 kilometers around the park, his breathing was still steady, and his heart rate hadn't even exceeded 70 beats per minute. The 41% awakening of the Superman gene brought not only strength and speed, but also nearly infinite endurance, which completely robbed him of the joy of exercise. Mr. Lin, a middle-aged man in a blue tracksuit, ran past, smiling and greeting him. Running so much again today. I saw you running for almost an hour, and you barely broke a sweat. Do you have some secret? Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. No secret, I just have better stamina. The man sighed enviously. If I had your stamina, I would have achieved my marathon goal long ago. After saying that, he sped up to catch up with his running companions ahead. Lin Yi leaned on a park bench and pulled out his phone to check messages. Gwen sent a photo of herself with Professor Grant in the Empire State University lab, with the caption, "Today's experiment went very smoothly." Tony posted an update, a test video of the Mark 7 armor, with the caption, "Next time I encounter the Hulk, I'll give him a taste of something new." There was also a message from Alfred, saying that Bruce had recently been taking a girl named Selena to the top-floor restaurant of Wayne Tower, and had even bought the art gallery next to the restaurant, specifically to hang the girl's paintings. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Ever since Bruce met Selena Kyle, he had completely changed. The once taciturn young man who always locked himself in the lab now made time every day to go shopping with Selena, and even bought her favorite bar just to make her happy, letting her be the boss lady. Alfred was initially worried, drinking whiskey with Lin Yi several times, complaining, "Master is only 18, how could he be so infatuated with a girl who once stole Wayne's jewelry?" It wasn't until Lin Yi persuaded him, "Bruce has grown up and has his own judgment, and although Selena was mischievous before, she's not bad at heart. Alfred reluctantly accepted the fact, but still looked melancholic whenever Selena was mentioned. Putting away his phone, Lin Yi looked at the basketball court not far away. Several young people were playing basketball, sweat dripping down their faces. Although they were panting from exhaustion, they were smiling happily. He suddenly felt a bit envious of this feeling of tiredness, that real sensation of sore muscles and accelerated heartbeat, which he couldn't achieve now no matter how much he exercised. You look like you have something on your mind. A gentle voice suddenly came from behind him. Lin Yi turned around and saw a man in khaki trousers and a white shirt standing not far away, tall and well-built, with broad shoulders and neatly combed blonde hair. The man held a dark blue jacket in his hand, with a familiar stars and stripes shield emblem on the chest. It was none other than Captain America, Steve Rogers, whom Nick Fury had mentioned earlier, having just awakened from the ice. Lin Yi stood up and extended his hand. Captain America. I'm Lin Yi, Nick Fury should have mentioned me to you. Of course. Steve shook Lin Yi's hand, his palm broad and strong, with the steady demeanor characteristic of a soldier. Fury said you're a very capable young man who has helped New York solve a lot of problems. Just doing what I should. Lin Yi smiled, pointed to the nearby bench. Want to sit for a bit? Steve nodded and sat down next to Lin Yi. He looked at the crowd in the park with a sense of bewilderment. Joggers wore wireless headphones and held smartphones. Children played with remote-controlled airplanes on the lawn. On a distant bench, someone worked on a laptop. All of this was completely different from the New York he remembered. You look like you're not very interested in exercising. Steve noticed Lin Yi's expression just now and asked with a smile. Lin Yi shrugged helplessly. It's not that I'm not interested, it's that there's no fun in it. My physique is special. No matter how far I run or how long I train, I never feel tired, nor do I get sore muscles. I used to be able to relieve stress through exercise, but now, even that little bit of fun is gone. Steve paused, then smiled. I understand that feeling. Back in the army, I was always the weakest one, always falling behind in training. Back then, my biggest wish was to be able to easily run 5 kilometers like the other soldiers. Now that I've woken up, my body is much stronger than before, but I've found that the world has changed, and even the way people exercise is different. He paused and looked at Lin Yi. How about trying a different kind of exercise? Like, taking a walk with me, and telling me what exactly happened in the world during the years I was gone. Fury only gave me a general idea, and I'm still not quite used to life now. Sure. Lin Yi nodded, stood up with Steve, and walked slowly along the park path. The morning mist gradually dispersed, and the sunlight became warmer. Lin Yi pointed to the distant Stark Tower and said to Steve. That's the headquarters of Stark Industries. The current head is Tony Stark, Howard Stark's son. You must know Howard, right? Of course. Steve said with a smile. Howard was a genius and a very good friend. We used to go on missions together. He always said he wanted to invent a weapon that could change the world. I didn't expect his son to actually do it, although Tony's armor looks a lot more flashy than the weapons Howard designed back then. Lin Yi smiled. Tony does like to come up with new things, but his armor has saved a lot of people. Last time New York was in chaos, with Green Goblin, Sandman, and Venom causing trouble one after another, Tony and we dealt with it together. Green Goblin, Sandman, Venom. Steve frowned. Are these all? They are people who gained special abilities due to genetic mutations or symbiotic parasites. Lin Yi explained, most people just want to protect themselves or solve their own problems, but there are also some who are blinded by power and want to destroy the city. But it's fine now, we have many people like Tony, Diana, and Bruce who will protect New York together. Diana. Is that the woman in golden armor with a shield and sword? Steve asked. Fury had given him some recent combat videos, and he was very impressed by the agile and righteous woman. Yes, she's Wonder Woman, from Themyscira. Lin Yi nodded, and Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman. Although he doesn't have superpowers, he's very formidable with his technology and combat skills. But he's been a bit busy lately, pursuing a girl named Selena, and often buys entire stores for her. Steve couldn't help but laugh. It seems that no matter the era, young people will always go crazy for love. At the mention of love, Steve's eyes suddenly softened, and he looked at the distant lake. I once had someone I wanted to protect too. Her name was Peggy Carter, an agent of the Strategic Scientific Reserve. She was very smart and brave. The first time we met, I was just a scrawny guy, but she didn't look down on me. She even encouraged me to stick to my beliefs. Lin Yi didn't speak, listening quietly. He knew Peggy Carter's significance to Steve. It was a longing that spanned 70 years. We promised each other that after the war, we'd go dancing together. Steve said. But later, to stop Red Skull's plan, I crashed the plane into the icy sea. I thought I'd never see her again, but I ended up sleeping for 70 years. Fury told me Peggy was still alive, just old and not in very good health. So, are you going to see her? Lin Yi asked. Steve nodded, of course. I owe her a dance. It's just. I don't know how she'll react when she sees me now. After all, for her, I disappeared for 70 years, but for me, the day I said goodbye to her feels like yesterday. Lin Yi patted Steve's shoulder. She'll definitely be thrilled to see you. No matter how much time passes, true feelings won't be defeated by time. Steve smiled, looking at Lin Yi gratefully. Thank you, Lin Yi. Talking to you has made me feel much better. I used to always feel like someone who didn't belong in this era, but now I realize that even though the world has changed, people's desire to protect their homes and pursue happiness has never changed. The two continued walking, passing a hot dog stand. Steve curiously watched the vendor collect payments with a phone and couldn't help but ask. Is that little square thing your money now? You don't use cash anymore. Lin Yi patiently explained, that's a smartphone. You can use it to make calls, go online, and pay. It's much more convenient than cash. If you want to learn, I can teach you, or I can have Tony prepare one for you. He's best at these high-tech products. Okay, Steve nodded, his eyes full of curiosity. I also want to know what else has changed in these 70 years besides technology. For example, people's lives, and, if the world truly became peaceful after the war. Peace is relative, Lin Yi said seriously. Although there haven't been large-scale wars, there are still some small conflicts and crises. But it's okay, we'll face them together. Just as you protected the world back then, now, it's our turn. Steve looked at Lin Yi, his eyes filled with admiration. Fury was right, you're a very reliable young man. With you guys around, I'm very relieved. The two walked to the park exit. The sun was already high, and the streets were starting to get lively. Steve checked his watch. Fury had told him to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the morning to familiarize himself with the current work procedures. I should go, Steve said to Lin Yi. Thank you for walking with me, and thank you for telling me so much. If you have time later, we can chat again, for example, about that serum you mentioned that can stabilize genes. I'd like to learn more about it. No problem, Lin Yi smiled. If you're interested, I can take you to the Stark Industries lab and give you a detailed introduction. Steve nodded, then turned and walked in the direction of S.H.I.E.L.D. Lin Yi stood still, watching Steve's retreating figure, thinking to himself Captain America's awakening would be a great help to them. Just then, his phone rang. It was Eddie. Lin Yi answered the call, Eddie's voice tinged with frustration. Lin Yi, Anne rejected me again. I waited for her downstairs at her company with flowers today, but she didn't even get out of the car. She just had the driver drive away. Don't be discouraged, Lin Yi comforted him. Anne is just still angry. You just need to persevere a bit longer, give her some time and space, and she'll forgive you. By the way, how's your job at the Daily Bugle? It's all right, Eddie's voice brightened slightly. The editor-in-chief is quite happy with me and even assigned me a column about city heroes. Today I even saw Peter Parker. He came to sell Spider-Man photos. I didn't expect that kid to know you. Peter is a very promising young man, Lin Yi smiled. Take good care of him and don't let the editor-in-chief bully him. Don't worry, Eddie said, I will. Oh, Venom has been very well behaved lately. He hasn't popped out randomly. He just keeps wanting to eat special things, so I have to keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't bite anyone. That's good, Lin Yi nodded. Call me anytime if anything comes up. After hanging up, Lin Yi thought about his work schedule for the day and his plans to take Gwen to the movies that evening. He had just turned to head towards Stark Industries when he suddenly felt the light behind him dim. Something was blocking the light, carrying a cold, non-earthly aura. Lin Yi's super hearing instantly activated, and the surrounding sounds became incredibly clear. Children's laughter, jazz melodies, car horns. But beyond these sounds, there was also an extremely subtle magical fluctuation, like silk gliding through the air, carrying the unique scent of Asgard. He discreetly activated his material analysis ability. A set of data instantly appeared before his eyes. Energy type: Asgardian magical energy plus unknown dark energy, energy intensity, A class, form, humanoid, equipment, magical fabric containing astral metal, unknown scepter, energy core not activated. Lin Yi, right. An elegant yet somewhat cunning voice sounded behind him, its tone slow, as if savoring the two words. Lin Yi slowly turned and saw a man in a black suit standing not far away. The man was tall, with impeccably styled golden hair. A few strands of hair fell slightly over his forehead, partially obscuring his deep green eyes. He was toying with a slender scepter in his hand, its head embedded with a deep blue gem that emitted a faint glow. It was Loki. Lin Yi wasn't too surprised. Prince Loki, your presence here suggests you're not on vacation. What is there to vacation for on this little blue ball? I'm here to see my future domain. In the Rusty Gear bar in Queens, New York. The air was a mix of the sourness of beer foam and the acrid smell of burning tobacco. Johnny Blaze leaned his elbows on the bar, amber liquid swaying in tiny ripples against the glass. His skull form had receded, but a few wisps of black smoke still lingered around his neck, like unburnt ashes. Another one. The bartender asked as he wiped a glass. Johnny was a big customer of theirs. Last time, Johnny had transformed into Ghost Rider in the bar because someone was harassing a female customer, burning a large hole in the bar counter, and Johnny had to pay a hefty sum to the bar for damages. Johnny didn't look up, just pushed the empty glass across. With ice, lots of it. The bartender filled the glass and watched Johnny stare blankly at the ice cubes, unable to resist interjecting. Mr. Blaze, you haven't smiled much these past few days. Are you in some trouble? Yeah, Johnny said dejectedly. I messed up my date. To be precise, I messed it up again. His thoughts drifted back to the restaurant 3 days ago. Roxanne, wearing her favorite red dress and exquisite makeup, sat by the window, the roses on the table already half wilted from waiting. As for him, he had run into 3 thugs robbing an old man on the way and couldn't help but transform into Ghost Rider to teach them a lesson. By the time he arrived at the restaurant, it was already 9:30 p.m., an hour and a half later than their agreed time. When Roxanne saw him, the anticipation in her eyes had turned into disappointment. Without waiting for his explanation, she picked up the bottle of red wine from the table and poured it fiercely over his skull, which he hadn't yet managed to revert. Splash! The red wine flowed down the burning skull, and the alcohol evaporated from the high heat, emitting a pungent white smoke. Roxanne's voice was tearful. Johnny Blaze. I spent 3 hours picking out a dress, doing my makeup, and waited over an hour for you. You always have an excuse, teaching thugs a lesson, saving passers-by, fighting demons. When will you ever put me first? When you learn to be punctual, then come find me. With that, she grabbed her bag and left without a backward glance, leaving Johnny alone in the restaurant filled with strange looks, the flames on his skull gradually dimming due to his low spirits. For the past 3 days, he had sent dozens of messages and made countless calls, but Roxanne hadn't replied, and even the TV station where she worked wouldn't let him in. Hey, excuse me. A slightly irritable voice interrupted Johnny's thoughts. Eddie Brock, with a backpack slung over his shoulders, his face grim, squeezed to the bar, slammed his bag onto the counter, and shouted at the bartender. Give me the strongest drink you've got. The stronger, the better. The bartender quickly poured another glass of whiskey and pushed it in front of Eddie. Eddie picked up the glass, took a large gulp, the spicy liquor burning his throat, but it made him feel a little more sober. That afternoon, he had waited for 2 hours downstairs at Anne's apartment building, holding a large bouquet of white roses. When Anne finally came down, she just said coldly, Eddie, we're over. Stop bothering me, then got into a taxi and left, not even glancing at the roses he offered. Judging by your look, are you like me, dumped? Johnny glanced at Eddie sideways. Eddie paused, then turned to look at Johnny, noticing the black smoke around his neck and the scorch marks on his fingertips, and instantly recognized who he was. You're Ghost Rider. The one who burned those thugs on the roadside last time. That's me, Johnny Blaze. Johnny extended his hand. By the looks of you, is it also because of a woman? Eddie hesitated, but still shook Johnny's hand. Eddie Brock. He sighed and took another swig of his drink. My girlfriend, Anne, broke up with me because I talked too much during an interview with Drake, and she got fired from her company. I've tried to see her several times these past few days, but she won't. Coincidence, me too. Johnny smiled, then gestured with his chin to the bartender, this round's on me. The bartender nodded silently, just wiping glasses. What about you? Eddie asked curiously. It can't be because of work too, can it? Worse than work. Johnny leaned against the bar, watching the ice in his glass slowly melt. My girlfriend, Roxanne, we had a date set for 8, but I was an hour and a half late because I was teaching some thugs a lesson. She poured a bottle of red wine over my head and told me to come back when I learned to be punctual. Red wine over your head. Eddie couldn't help but laugh. You didn't transform and burn down the restaurant. I thought about it, but she would have been even angrier. Johnny shook his head helplessly. What about you? Didn't you consult with that thing inside you and ask it to help you win Anne back? Eddie's face stiffened, and he instinctively touched his chest. Venom was currently behaving inside him, and upon hearing Johnny's words, it grumbled softly. Human emotions are so troublesome. Wouldn't it be easier to just grab Anne? Shut up. Eddie told Venom in his mind, then gave Johnny a wry smile. It only makes things worse. Last time I was having dinner with Anne, it insisted on coming out and saying, Miss Anne, Eddie says your cooking tastes worse than chicken, and Anne left right then and there. Johnny couldn't help but burst out laughing. Looks like we're both unlucky guys. You can say that again. Eddie also laughed, raising his glass, to us unlucky guys who got dumped by women. To the unlucky ones. Johnny clinked his glass against Eddie's, the sound crisp. Just as the two were engrossed in conversation, exchanging failed experiences in pursuing girlfriends, the bar door suddenly swung open. A cold gust of wind blew in, carrying the dampness of the rainy night outside. Nick Fury, wearing a black trench coat and his signature eye patch, walked in alongside Natasha Romanoff. Their entrance instantly drew the attention of everyone in the bar. The bartender quickly went to greet them. Director Fury, what brings you here? Would you like something to drink? No need. Fury waved his hand, his gaze directly locking onto Johnny and Eddie at the bar, and walked straight over. Mr. Blaze, Mr. Brock, I need a few minutes of your time. Johnny frowned. Director Fury. If I recall correctly, we already reached an agreement last time. During the chaos in New York last time, Fury wanted him to join SHIELD's special talent pool, but he flat out refused. He didn't want to be bound by anyone, much less work for S.H.I.E.L.D. Eddie said to Fury, I have nothing to say to S.H.I.E.L.D. His mind was currently consumed with how to win Anne back, he had no interest in anything else. I'm here to ask for your help. Fury stood with his hands on his hips, his tone serious. The world is facing a disaster. An Asgardian named Loki wants to rule the world, and he has an alien army of Chitauri preparing to invade. S.H.I.E.L.D. is assembling the Avengers and needs special talents, like you to join. World catastrophe. The Avengers. Eddie scoffed, picked up his glass, and took another swig. Director Fury, I can't even get my girlfriend back right now, so I don't have time for some apocalypse. Find someone else, like that big green guy, or that tin can. Johnny also stood up, his height giving him half a head advantage over Fury. His right hand transformed into a burning bone claw, the heat slightly distorting the air around them. If you one-eyed man don't want to be roasted into a torch, then please leave now. I'm not interested in saving the world. Fury had anticipated their refusal. He looked at Natasha behind him and lowered his voice. Agent Romanoff, it's your turn. Natasha raised an eyebrow, walked over to Fury, and also lowered her voice. Fury, I'm an agent. This isn't part of my job description. I trust you, Romanoff. Fury's voice was deep, you're the best agent, in every aspect. Natasha could only say, after this is over, I'm going on vacation. Fury's expression was calm, no problem. She took a step forward, walked in front of Johnny and Eddie, and smiled. Mr. Blaze, Mr. Brock, I'm Natasha Romanoff. Director Fury is right. Earth truly needs you, but I also know that what you care about most right now is how to win back your girlfriends. She looked at Johnny, her tone gentle. Mr. Blaze, you said Miss Roxanne was angry because you were late. Have you ever considered that what she truly cares about isn't the lateness itself, but that you put her expectations in a secondary position? Mr. Brock, Miss Anne broke up with you because you lost your job. Have you ever considered that what she cares about isn't the job itself, but that you didn't consider her situation? You can help us win back our girlfriends. Johnny was the first to react. I can offer you advice, or help you arrange opportunities. Natasha nodded. Of course, you yourselves also need to correct your shortcomings. No beautiful lady likes a man who is always late or careless. Johnny and Eddie's eyes lit up. If they could win back their girlfriends, joining the Avengers didn't seem so impossible. If you can do that. Eddie put down his glass. I can join the Avengers and help you fight that Loki guy. Me too. Johnny also nodded. If Roxanne can forgive me, I can help you fight. But I won't accept S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control. I'll act when I want to act. No problem. Fury immediately agreed. As long as you're willing to join, these conditions are negotiable. Johnny and Eddie exchanged glances again, raised their glasses, and lightly clinked them. Deal. Meanwhile, in the depths of the universe, on the Dark Elves' homeworld, Svartalheim. There was no sunlight here, only eternal darkness. Broken planetary debris floated in the sky, and the ground was covered with lava-spewing fissures. The air was filled with the smell of sulfur and decay. Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, sat on a throne made of bones and obsidian. He wore heavy black armor, and his helmet covered his face, revealing only a pair of eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Behind him stood countless dark elves holding weapons, all expressionless, with cold eyes. In the open space in front of the throne, Loki, dressed in Asgardian golden armor and holding a scepter, stood gracefully, smiling. Asgardian, you have quite some nerve, daring to trespass here. Malekith's voice was hoarse and deep. Aren't you afraid of being torn to shreds by us? Malekith, I'm here to discuss cooperation, not to fight. Loki bowed slightly. I know that you Dark Elves have always been searching for the ether, which is the reality stone, wanting to use it to restore the Dark Age, and plunge the entire universe into eternal darkness. Malekith's body stiffened slightly. How do you know about the ether? I know more than you think. Loki smiled. I also know that the ether is currently on Earth, on a human woman named Jane Foster. And I want to rule Earth. We can cooperate. I'll help you get the ether, and you help me conquer Earth. Earth belongs to me, and the ether belongs to you. How about it? Malekith was silent for a few seconds, clearly considering Loki's proposal. The Dark Elves had been dormant for thousands of years, waiting for the ether to appear. Now that there was a clue, he didn't want to miss this opportunity. But he also knew that Asgardians were always cunning, and Loki was notoriously known as the god of mischief in Asgard. He couldn't easily trust him. Why should I trust you? Malekith asked. You are an Asgardian prince. Why would you help us, enemies? And why do you want to rule Earth? Because I'm not Asgard's good prince. Loki's smile turned cold. My brother Thor, my father Odin, they all treat me as an outcast, as an enemy who could betray them at any moment. There's no place for me in Asgard, so I need to find a kingdom of my own. Earth is the best choice. As for helping you get the ether, it's just a small favor for me. I can open a portal to Earth, allowing your army to enter smoothly. I can also help you find Jane Foster and get the ether. In return, you just need to help me defeat Earth's resistors, like my brother Thor. Malekith looked at Loki, trying to find traces of lies in his expression, but Loki's eyes were too calm, showing no flaws. He thought for a long time, and finally decided to accept the proposal. The ether was too important to the Dark Elves. Even with a glimmer of hope, he couldn't give up. All right, I agree to cooperate. Malekith stood up, his armor clanking heavily on the ground. But if I find out you're lying to me, I will make you and Earth fall into eternal darkness together. Don't worry, I never lie, at least not when cooperating. Loki smiled. May our cooperation be pleasant, Chief Malekith. Malekith didn't answer, but just waved to the Dark Elves behind him. Prepare the army. In 3 days, follow me to Earth, get the ether, and destroy all resistors. Yes, sir. The dark elves shouted in unison, their voices echoing throughout Svartalheim. Loki watched everything before him, the smile on his lips deepening. His plan had finally taken its first step. Earth would soon become his kingdom. Thor, Odin, everyone who looked down on him, would pay the price for their arrogance. And at this moment on Earth, the rain was still falling in New York. Johnny and Eddie were still in the bar, discussing the details of winning back their girlfriends with Natasha. Fury was calling Lin Yi, telling him that the Avengers had 2 new, special members. Lin Yi had just parted ways with Steve Rogers and was preparing to go home to have dinner with Gwen. A war concerning the fate of the world was about to begin again, huh? Why did I say again? The top floor of Wayne Tower was temporarily converted into a love training base. The walls, which originally displayed precious oil paintings, were now covered with pink sticky notes. They read, Anne Wang's preferences, black coffee, no sugar, classical music, quiet bookstores. Roxanne Simpson's preferences, handmade jewelry, old school rock music, outdoor movies, and similar information. Bruce Wayne leaned against the bar in the corner, a glass of whiskey in his hand, watching the bustling scene before him with interest. A group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were busy surrounding 2 problem youths. Eddie, this navy blue shirt suits you better. Martha, the fashion designer, held 2 shirts up to Eddie, disdainfully pulling off the wrinkled black t-shirt he was wearing. You used to look like you crawled out of a dumpster. Miss Anne is a legal advisor, accustomed to elites in suits and ties. You need to let her see your change. Eddie was stunned. The venom in his arms seemed to sense his nervousness, and black tendrils quietly emerged, only to be forced back by a glare from Romanov. But, I'll be uncomfortable in a shirt. Eddie retorted softly. And Venom doesn't like clothes that are too tight either. You both need to learn to adapt. Romanov walked over with a glass of water. If you can't even wear a shirt, how can you make Anne believe you can settle down? She left you before, not because of Venom, but because you always made a mess of your life. Johnny Blaze, nearby, leaned on the sofa, a unlit cigarette between his fingers. Martha had said that the smell of smoke would offend Roxanne and had forcibly confiscated his lighter. Seeing Eddie's predicament, he couldn't help but sneer. Can't even handle a piece of clothing, no wonder you can't win your girlfriend back. You're not much better. Martha turned to glare at Johnny, throwing a dark brown leather jacket at him. The one you wore before was too exaggerated, the rivets were almost poking people. Roxanne works at a TV station and needs a presentable partner, not a savage who looks like he just rushed off a motorcycle track. Johnny raised an eyebrow, taking the leather jacket and trying it on. Unexpectedly, the jacket had a sharp cut, with unnecessary decorations removed, retaining his personality while adding a touch of maturity. He looked at himself in the mirror, a smile unconsciously curving his lips. Not bad, at least it's more comfortable than my old one. It's not just the clothes. Lena, the relationship expert, walked over with a notebook and sat between the 2 of them. Your sense of time and communication style are the biggest problems. Johnny, you were an hour and a half late last time. Roxanne waited for you at the restaurant. Do you know how embarrassed she was? She specifically wore a new dress and put on makeup, but you arrived covered in fire, and someone at the next table even took a photo and posted it on social media. Johnny was a little embarrassed. He had only thought he was late because he was teaching delinquents a lesson and hadn't considered Roxanne's feelings. Then, how should I apologize? Sincerely. Lena wrote the word, sincere, in her notebook and showed it to him. Don't make excuses like, I was doing good deeds. Admit your mistakes and tell her you value her feelings. For example, you can take her to her favorite handmade jewelry store, personally pick out a necklace for her, and then say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made you wait so long. From now on, I'll leave early, even if it means waiting at the door an hour beforehand. On the other side, Mark, the psychological expert, was communicating with Eddie. Eddie, you investigated Drake without consulting Anne, which led to her being fired from her company. This is a trust issue. You need to let her know that you will now communicate with her about everything you do and won't let her be implicated because of you again. For example, you can take her to the bookstore she used to frequent and tell her that you're now working at the Daily Bugle, writing positive reports, and that you'll consult with her before every interview and ask for her opinion. Eddie nodded, carefully noting Mark's words in his memo. He had never imagined that pursuing a girlfriend involved so much knowledge. Before, he would only knock on her door with different bouquets of flowers, only to be turned away. All right, that's enough theoretical knowledge. Romanoff checked the time, clapped her hands, and quieted everyone down. Next up is practical training. Lin Yi, Gwen, Banner, Betty, have you all memorized your bystander roles? Lin Yi stood up from the sofa, holding an itinerary. Memorized. Anne will go to the Serene Cafe, near her law firm at 3 p.m. today to buy coffee, then return to the law firm. Roxanne will leave the TV station at 4 p.m. and go to the park across the street for an outdoor shoot. Her assistant said she'd leave 10 minutes early today to rest on a park bench for a while. Very good. Romanoff nodded with satisfaction. Eddie, your mission is to casually encounter Anne at the cafe, use the opening line we taught you, and invite her for a coffee. Johnny, you go to the park bench and casually encounter Roxanne, helping her solve a small problem. Betty will pretend her camera is broken and ask for your help. After you fix the camera, Roxanne will notice you, and that's when you greet her. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to complete the love plan before the end of the world. Now, operation start. Received, sir. The SHIELD agents said in unison. Everything was ready, and the group split into two teams. Eddie, Lin Yi, and Gwen went to the cafe, while Johnny, Banner, and Betty went to the park. Bruce Wayne originally wanted to follow along to watch the fun but was called home by a phone call from Alfred, who said, Miss Selina is waiting at the villa and wants to choose the decoration style for the new bar with him. Well, I'm off. Bruce picked up his jacket and waved to Romanoff. If you need any help, call me anytime. Wayne Enterprises resources are all available. Romanoff nodded. After falling in love, this young Master Wayne had become unprofessional, but in this state, he seemed more like an 18-year-old. The Serene Cafe was located in a small alley near Anne's law firm. It had a simple decor and played soft classical music, exactly Anne's preferred style. Lin Yi and Gwen arrived half an hour early, chose a window seat, and ordered 2 coffees. Lin Yi's was Chinese green tea, as he still wasn't used to coffee, and Gwen's was a latte. Do you think Eddie will be so nervous later that he forgets his lines? Gwen leaned on the table, whispering to Lin Yi, her eyes fixed on the entrance. Lin Yi took a sip of green tea and smiled, saying, Probably, but with our help, it shouldn't be a big problem. Just as they were speaking, the wind chimes at the door rang. Anne walked in. She was wearing a light gray business suit, her hair tied in a low ponytail, with light makeup on her face, and carrying a folder. She looked capable and elegant. She walked to the bar and told the barista. 1 black coffee, no sugar, please. Lin Yi gave Gwen a look, and Gwen immediately understood. She picked up a book from the table, pretending to go to the bookshelf to find a book. As she passed Anne, she, accidentally, bumped into her arm. Oh, I'm so sorry. Gwen quickly apologized. The folder in Anne's hand fell to the ground, and the documents scattered everywhere. It's fine, Annie said, squatting down to pick up the scattered documents, her face betraying little emotion. Lately, she had been in a bad mood due to her busy work schedule, and her recent breakup with Eddie made her a bit impatient with strangers, accidents. Just then, Eddie walked in through the doorway. He was wearing his navy blue shirt, his hair neatly combed, and he held a small gift box containing a handmade bookmark, a suggestion from Lena, knowing Annie loved to read. Seeing Annie, his heart instantly quickened, and his palms grew sweaty from nervousness. Annie, let me help you. Eddie quickly went to pick up the documents. Annie froze for a moment upon hearing Eddie's voice, then slowly looked up, surprised to see him. She hadn't expected to run into Eddie here, much less to see him so neatly dressed, a stark contrast to the disheveled investigative reporter he used to be. What are you doing here? Annie's tone was a bit cold, but she didn't immediately turn to leave. Eddie took a deep breath, recalling Lena's suggested opening lines, and bravely said, I know you like this coffee shop, so I specifically came here to wait for you. I'm not here to bother you, I just wanted to apologize. I'm very sorry, Annie, that you lost your job because of me. He handed the gift box to Annie and continued, This is a bookmark I bought for you. It's handmade and has a sunflower design, which I know you like. I'm working at the Daily Bugle now, writing only positive stories, like the one published yesterday, stories of New York community volunteers, which I interviewed. I think everything through now and won't be as impulsive as I used to be. Annie looked at Eddie's sincere eyes, then at the gift box, feeling a stir in her heart. She was silent for a few seconds, then took the gift box and softly said, "Thank you, the bookmark is very pretty." Lin Yi and Gwen exchanged glances and quietly stepped aside. First step successful. Then, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Eddie asked. Annie hesitated, checked the time, and seeing she still had half an hour before work, she nodded. Yes, but I only have half an hour. Eddie breathed a sigh of relief, walked to the counter, and told the barista, 2 black coffees, no sugar, please. Lin Yi took out his phone and sent a message to Romanov. Things are going well at the coffee shop. Eddie and Annie are having coffee. Romanov quickly replied. Good, let them talk for a while. The park is almost ready too. In a corner of New York's Central Park, Roxanne had just left the TV station and arrived at the designated outdoor shooting location 10 minutes early. She wore an off-white dress, held a notebook, and sat down on a bench, preparing to organize her shooting script. Banner and Betty had already arrived. Banner pretended to be strolling in the park with his old camera, while Betty sat on a nearby lawn, feigning interest in the scenery. Has Johnny arrived? Betty whispered to Banner, glancing towards the park entrance. Banner nodded, lowering his voice. He's here, behind that tree over there. He seems a bit nervous, constantly adjusting his jacket. Betty followed Banner's gaze and indeed saw Johnny leaning against a large tree, occasionally fixing his hair in his phone screen and muttering something, likely rehearsing the apology lines Lena had taught him. It's our turn. Betty stood up, walked to the bench with her camera, and deliberately sighed. Oh, why is this camera broken again? We still have to shoot outside later. What am I going to do? Roxanne heard Betty's words, looked up at her, and out of politeness, asked, Do you need help? I know a bit about cameras. Really? Betty showed a surprised expression, handing the camera to Roxanne. Could you take a look? It was fine just now, but suddenly it won't turn on. Roxanne took the camera, examined it carefully, and found that the lens was jammed. Just as she was about to adjust it, Johnny emerged from behind the tree, pretending to pass by, and seeing the camera in Betty's hand, said, Camera broken. Let me see, I've fixed similar ones before. Roxanne paused upon hearing Johnny's voice, then looked up. Johnny was wearing his dark brown leather jacket, his hair neatly combed, completely different from his previous wild biker image. Johnny. Johnny walked to Betty's side, took the camera, and skillfully adjusted the lens with his fingers, saying, I used to fix my grandpa's old camera. This problem is very common, you just need to gently pry the lens. As he spoke, he secretly glanced at Roxanne, and when he saw her looking at him, he quickly averted his gaze. A few seconds later, the camera clicked and returned to normal. It's done, try it. Johnny handed the camera back to Betty, it should open now. Betty took the camera, tried it, and indeed, it worked normally. Thank you so much. Betty winked at Johnny, then turned to Roxanne and said, Thank you, miss. You two chat. After Betty left, only Johnny and Roxanne remained by the bench, and the atmosphere became a bit awkward. Johnny took a deep breath, recalled Lena's words, and earnestly said to Roxanne, Roxanne, I'm sorry. I was over an hour late for our last date, made you wait so long, and had you surrounded by onlookers in the restaurant. I know I was wrong, I shouldn't have made excuses about doing good deeds and ignored your feelings. He took a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny motorcycle pendant. I bought this at the handmade jewelry store you like. I want to tell you that from now on, I'll leave early, even if it means waiting for you downstairs at your place an hour in advance, I won't make you wait for me again. Roxanne looked at the necklace, then at Johnny's sincere eyes, and most of her anger had already dissipated. The necklace is beautiful. Roxanne took the box and softly said, Don't be late next time. I don't like waiting for people. Johnny's eyes lit up when he heard this. I promise. I'll be on time, even early, from now on. So, are you free tonight? I know an outdoor cinema that's showing, Roman Holiday, which you like, tonight. I'd like to invite you to watch it. Roxanne looked at Johnny's expectant eyes and couldn't help but smile. Okay, but you have to wait for me downstairs at my place half an hour early. No being late. Absolutely. Johnny nodded vigorously. Banner and Betty, hiding behind a nearby tree, also breathed a sigh of relief at this sight. Banner took out his phone and sent a message to Romanov. The park side was successful. Johnny invited Roxanne to the movies, and Roxanne accepted. Shield. Underground base. Loki, clad in his armor and holding his scepter, attempted to breach the base's defenses but was blocked by a blue energy shield. Loki roared, and his scepter fired an energy beam that struck the energy shield, only causing a ripple without any damage. Loki, you might as well give up. Nick Fury's voice came from the base's loudspeakers. Linyi warned us early on that you would come for the Tesseract. We've strengthened our defenses. This energy shield is Stark Industries' latest development, incorporating Linyi's molecular stabilization technology. You simply cannot break through. Loki. It was 3:30 p.m. at Harper Legal Services in Midtown Manhattan. Annie Weighing had just finished a 2-hour contract negotiation. She rubbed her throbbing temples and took a sip of the cold coffee on her desk. Since leaving the Life Foundation, her workload at this new law firm had tripled, but at least she no longer had to worry about Drake's ambitions. Annie, there's a reporter from the New York Chronicle downstairs who says he wants to interview you about corporate compliance, her assistant said, knocking on the door and handing her a business card. It read, Reporter, Marcus White. Annie was taken aback. She hadn't given any media interviews recently, but since he had come all this way, it seemed impolite to refuse. Have him wait for me in the reception room, I'll be there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, Annie straightened her suit skirt and walked into the reception room. A man in a gray trench coat was sitting on the sofa, his back to her, tall and well-built, with slightly curly hair. Mr. Marcus? Annie asked softly. The man slowly turned around, revealing a handsome but unfamiliar face. Miss Annie Weighing, I've heard much about you. His voice had a peculiar magnetism, and he held a silver scepter between his fingers, its tip inlaid with a blue gem that glowed faintly under the light. You're not Marcus White. Annie instantly became alert. The photo on the business card didn't match the man in front of her. Just as she was about to step back, the man suddenly stood up with superhuman speed, grabbed her wrist, and pressed the blue gem at the tip of the scepter against her chest. A chilling sensation spread from her chest, and Annie's mind instantly went blank, her eyes gradually becoming vacant. She stood rooted to the spot like a marionette, no longer struggling. Very good, the man smiled with satisfaction, withdrawing the scepter. Now, come with me. Don't make a sound, don't resist. Annie nodded mechanically and followed the man out of the reception room. As they passed her assistant's desk, the assistant asked, puzzled, Miss Annie, is the interview over? Loki raised his hand, and a blue light flashed from the tip of the scepter. The assistant's eyes instantly glazed over, and she numbly lowered her head, continuing to sort documents. Loki led Annie out of the law firm's door as if no one was around, then got into a black car and disappeared into the traffic. Half an hour later, in the dressing room backstage at WNYW Television in Queens, Roxanne Simpson was touching up her makeup. She was hosting a late-night talk show tonight, with a recently popular country singer as her guest. In the mirror, she wore a red gown, her long hair slightly curled, and her face impeccably made up. Even though she was at odds with Johnny, she never let it affect her work. Miss Roxanne, the director wants you to go to the studio to review the script, a staff member in a black suit said, knocking on the door with a deep voice. Roxanne nodded, picked up the script, and stood up. The staff member followed her, and they walked down the corridor toward the studio. The lights in the corridor suddenly flickered, and Roxanne instinctively looked back, only to see the staff member's face transform into an unfamiliar one. It was Loki. Who are you? Roxanne took a step back, her hand reaching for the pepper spray in her pocket. Loki didn't answer, he simply raised the scepter in his hand. He quickly stepped forward, pressing the tip of the scepter against Roxanne's chest. Just like Annie, Roxanne's eyes instantly lost focus, and her body became stiff. Come with me. Roxanne, like a controlled puppet, followed Loki through the emergency exit and out the back door of the TV station. Another black car was waiting outside. Loki opened the door and pushed her inside. The car started, raising a cloud of dust as it sped away. Loki sat in the passenger seat, a cunning smile on his face. With two bargaining chips in hand, it was time to make those heroes busy. At 8 p.m., in the Stacy's bedroom, warm yellow light spilled onto the floor. Lin Yi had just showered, his hair still dripping wet. He hugged Gwen from behind as she dried her hair, resting his chin on her shoulder, his voice languid from his shower. Did Chief George work overtime again today? I think I heard him leave a moment ago. Gwen laughed, swatting his hand away, and picked up the hairdryer. He said there was a warehouse break-in in his precinct, and he went to check it out. Don't mess around, my hair isn't dry yet. Lin Yi obediently let go, leaned against the headboard, and watched Gwen drying her hair. Her golden hair fluttered under the hairdryer, like soft silk. Just as he was about to say something romantic, the phone on the nightstand suddenly rang urgently, the screen displaying, Romanov. Natasha calling at this hour surely meant something urgent. He answered the call, and Natasha said, Lin Yi, something's happened. Annie and Roxanne are missing. What? Lin Yi sat up abruptly, and Gwen also turned off the hairdryer, leaning closer. Loki did it, Natasha said. He left 4 addresses, each with oil drums and bombs, saying we only have 20 minutes to find Annie and Roxanne. If we exceed the time, the bombs will explode. Lin Yi glanced at the time on his phone, 8:03 p.m., meaning they had to find them and disarm the bombs before 8:23 p.m. Send the addresses to my phone, we'll leave immediately. Already sent, Natasha added. Everyone else has already left. You too. We're going to the abandoned dock in Manhattan, Lin Yi said decisively after checking the addresses, getting up to put on his clothes. Gwen, prepare for battle, and be careful. Gwen nodded, quickly pulled her spider suit from the wardrobe, and skillfully put it on. Don't worry, I won't hold you back. Lin Yi put on his black combat suit, activated his flight ability, and flew out the window with Gwen. In the night, their figures were like 2 streaks of lightning, flying towards the Manhattan dock. Mid-flight, a question suddenly flashed through Lin Yi's mind. If Loki wanted to kill people, he could just do it directly. Why go to all this trouble setting up bombs and only giving 20 minutes? Something's not right, Lin Yi suddenly said. Loki isn't trying to kill people, he's trying to buy time. Gwen paused. Buy time. What does he want to do? I don't know, but it can't be good. Lin Yi clenched his fist, increasing his flying speed. We need to disarm the bombs and rescue them as quickly as possible, then go to S.H.I.E.L.D. The Tesseract is there, and Loki is most likely after it. As Lin Yi and Gwen rushed to the dock, in the command center of the S.H.I.E.L.D. underground base, Agent Coulson hurried to Nick Fury with a report. Director, General Ross's troops have surrounded the base. There's about a division of soldiers, equipped with tanks and armored vehicles. Ross. Nick Fury frowned. What does he want? Didn't the previous hearing already reach a consensus that the Tesseract would be temporarily held by S.H.I.E.L.D.? I'm not sure. Coulson handed over a tablet, displaying surveillance footage of the base's perimeter. The tanks, cannons were aimed at the base's gate, and the soldiers were armed and ready, creating a tense atmosphere. His adjutant said General Ross wants to speak with you personally. Nick Fury took the communicator and pressed the answer button. General Ross's voice came through, flat and calm, completely different from his usual temper. Fury, hand over the Tesseract. S.H.I.E.L.D. has no right to hoard such a dangerous item, it should be controlled by the military. Ross, do you know what you're saying? Nick Fury's voice deepened. Research on the Tesseract is still ongoing, and Congress has already approved S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody. If you have objections, you can request a hearing, not surround the base with troops. A hearing is too slow. Ross's voice remained flat. I'll give you 10 minutes. Either hand over the Tesseract, or I'll order an attack. Nick Fury was filled with doubts. Although Ross was impulsive, he would never violate procedures, let alone surround S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base with troops. Something was definitely wrong. Ross, are you being controlled? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the communicator, then Ross's cold voice came through. In 10 minutes, I will attack. With that, he hung up the phone. Director, what should we do? Coulson looked at Nick Fury. Notify all agents to go to Level 1 alert, close the base gates, and activate the defense system, Nick Fury quickly ordered. Also, Have Hawkeye keep an eye on the Tesseract's research lab to ensure Dr. Selvig and the Tesseract's safety. Coulson immediately turned to make arrangements, and the command center became a hive of activity. Nick Fury looked at the tanks in the surveillance footage, his fingers tightly gripping the communicator. He had a premonition that a greater crisis was quietly approaching. 10 minutes later, a series of violent explosions erupted outside the base. General Ross, ignoring his subordinates' pleas, ordered to open fire. In a few breaths, the shield was breached by the dense artillery fire. Tank shells struck the base gate, and the heavy alloy door instantly deformed, creating a huge gap. Soldiers, guns in hand, charged into the base. SHIELD agents immediately retaliated, and intense gunfire and explosions echoed as both sides engaged in a fierce battle at the base entrance. Director, the base gate has been breached. The agents are resisting fiercely, but the enemy's firepower is too strong, we can't hold on much longer. An agent ran in to report, his face streaked with blood. Nick Fury was about to order a retreat when he suddenly heard an alarm from the direction of the research lab. Alarm. Intruder in the research lab. Alarm. This is bad. Nick Fury's expression changed drastically. He drew his pistol and ran towards the research lab, with Natasha close behind. Inside the research lab, Dr. Selvig was collecting data from the Tesseract, while Hawkeye stood guard nearby. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the doorway, and Agent Coulson walked in. Dr. Selvig, Hawkeye, the director wants you to move the Tesseract immediately. Hawkeye frowned. Coulson. Didn't we just say we were supposed to stay here? And the director didn't issue a transfer order. The situation is urgent, the director sent me to relay the order. Coulson said, slowly walking towards Dr. Selvig. Just then, another Coulson ran in from outside the door, holding a document. Drive. Selvig, these are the latest research data. Wait, who are you? The two, Coulsons, exchanged glances, and a strange smile suddenly flickered across the former's face. He raised his hand, and a silver scepter appeared in it. It was Loki's scepter. It seems my disguise has been exposed. As soon as he finished speaking, Coulson's form began to change, quickly transforming into Loki. He stepped forward quickly, pressing the tip of the scepter against Dr. Selvig's chest, and a blue gem flashed with light. Dr. Selvig's eyes instantly became vacant, and he stopped his work. Hawkeye, stop him. Nick Fury and Natasha burst into the research lab, aiming their guns at Loki. Hawkeye was about to draw an arrow, but Loki turned and pressed the scepter against Hawkeye's chest. Like Selvig, Hawkeye's eyes became glazed over, and he stood motionless. Director Fury, Agent Natasha, we meet again. Loki raised his scepter, and the blue gem at its tip emitted a strong light. You thought a mere shield could stop me. How naive. Nick Fury pulled the trigger, and bullets flew towards Loki. Loki waved his scepter, and a blue energy barrier blocked the bullets. He quickly stepped forward, swung the scepter, and struck Nick Fury's chest. Nick Fury grunted, fell to the ground, and lost consciousness. Natasha pulled out her two guns and fired at Loki, but Loki easily fended off the shots with his scepter. Loki's scepter fired a beam of light. Natasha quickly dodged, and the beam destroyed the equipment behind her, causing a violent explosion. Stop struggling, you can't win against me. He retracted his scepter and ordered Selvig and Hawkeye, take the Tesseract and follow me. Selvig and Hawkeye mechanically picked up the box containing the Tesseract and followed Loki out of the research lab. Passing by Nick Fury lying on the ground, Loki stopped and looked down at him. Soon, Earth will belong to me. And you will only become my spoils of war. With that, Loki, accompanied by Selvig and Hawkeye, disappeared down the corridor. Natasha struggled to her feet and helped Nick Fury up. Director, what do we do now? Nick Fury coughed a few times. Notify everyone to abandon the base and immediately pursue Loki. We must retrieve the Tesseract. At Manhattan Docks, next to a discarded container, Annie was tied to an iron pole, surrounded by a dozen oil drums, each with a timed bomb attached. The countdown on the screen showed 0 hours 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Annie. When Lin Yi and Gwen arrived, Banner and Betty were already attempting to disarm the bombs. Banner, dressed in a white lab coat, had sweat on his forehead, his fingers moving quickly over the bomb's wires. Although he was a scientist, bomb disposal was not his specialty. Lin Yi, you're here. Betty breathed a sigh of relief. The bomb's wiring is very complex, and we're afraid of making a mistake and detonating it. Hulk could withstand an explosion, but it would inevitably harm Annie. Lin Yi stepped forward quickly, activating his material analysis ability. The internal structure of the bomb immediately appeared before his eyes. The red wire is the power, blue is the detonator, and black is the backup wire. Step back, I'll disarm the bomb. Lin Yi took a deep breath, pinched the red wire, and gently snapped it. It's disarmed. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief, tossing the bomb into the distant sea. Annie's eyes were still vacant. Remembering Loki's Mind Stone scepter, Lin Yi immediately pinched the philtrum of her nose. Annie let out a muffled groan, her eyes gradually clearing. Seeing Lin Yi, she weakly said, Lin Yi, it was Loki, he controlled me with a scepter. I know. It's good that you're alright. Lin Yi supported Annie. Betty, please take Annie to a safe place first. We'll go support the others. At the same time, in an abandoned factory in Brooklyn, Captain America blocked bomb shrapnel with his shield. Johnny Blaze, transformed into Ghost Rider, engulfed in hellfire, grabbed the bomb's fuse, and the flames instantly burned it through. After Roxanne was rescued, she gradually regained consciousness at Johnny's call. Roxanne, I'm sorry. I was wrong before. Johnny looked at Roxanne, his eyes filled with guilt. Roxanne didn't speak, just hugged him gently. In an old warehouse in Queens, Tony, wearing his Mark 6 armor, directly blasted the bomb's detonator with his repulsor ray. Eddie transformed into Venom. But the address was empty. They immediately realized they had been tricked and flew towards Stark Tower. In a parking lot in the Bronx, Wonder Woman ensnared the bomb with her lasso of truth, and Bruce cut the wires with a batarang, discovering this location was also empty. Loki's target isn't them, it's the cube. Alfred found Loki at Stark Tower. Bruce immediately realized, starting the Batmobile, to Stark Tower. At 8:25 p.m., all the heroes converged near Stark Tower. Lin Yi, Gwen, Captain America, Tony, Johnny, Eddie, Banner, Betty, Wonder Woman, Bruce, everyone looked up at the rooftop of Stark Tower. There, a blue beam of light shot into the sky. In the middle of the beam was a massive portal. Black warships were slowly emerging from the portal, and Chitauri soldiers descended like locusts, attacking the citizens on the streets. As that, the Dark Elves' fleet. Banner looked at the shape of the warships, his expression grave. And the Chitauri army. Tony's armor mask opened, his eyes cold. Loki has brought both alien forces. Chitauri soldiers, armed with energy weapons, fired at surrounding buildings. Glass shards flew, cars exploded, and citizens screamed and fled. Dark Elf warships spewed black energy beams, striking a building. The building instantly collapsed, enveloped in smoke and dust. We can't wait any longer. Captain America raised his shield. Tony, you and Bruce handle the air, preventing more alien warships from entering. Johnny, Eddie, you handle the ground, protecting the citizens. Diana, Gwen, you and I will go to the rooftop to close the portal. Lin Yi, Banner, you support all directions, ready for any emergencies. Tony and Bruce immediately flew into the air. Tony's armor spewed flames, firing missiles at the Chitauri soldiers. Bruce summoned the Batwing, attacking the Dark Elf warships with its cannon. Johnny, transformed into Ghost Rider, engulfed in hellfire, rode his burning motorcycle towards the Chitauri soldiers. Wherever the flames reached, the Chitauri soldiers instantly turned to ash. Eddie, transformed into Venom, extended black symbiotic tendrils, ensnaring Chitauri soldiers and flinging them into the air. Captain America, Wonder Woman, and Gwen ran towards Stark Tower. Captain America blocked energy attacks with his shield. Wonder Woman cut through Chitauri soldiers' weapons with her Godkiller sword, and Gwen swung onto the exterior wall of the building with her webs, climbing towards the rooftop. Lin Yi activated his flight ability, soaring into the air, his eyes glowing with orange-red heat vision. The temperature of his top-tier heat vision reached 5,000. A ray shot towards a Dark Elf warship. The warship's hull instantly melted, emitting black smoke as it plummeted. Banner took a deep breath, his body beginning to swell, green skin covering him completely. The Hulk's roar was deafening. He leapt onto the top of a building, punching a Chitauri soldier. The soldiers flew out like kites with broken strings. Explosions, roars, and the clash of weapons mingled together. The storm had begun. On the rooftop of Stark Tower, Loki stood beside the portal, a triumphant smile on his face as he watched the chaos below. Selvig and Hawkeye stood behind him, their eyes vacant, like puppets. Soon, the entire blue star will bow before me. Loki raised the scepter in his hand, the blue gem emitting a dazzling light. Fury, Tony, Lin Yi, all your resistance is futile. He seemed not to notice that Gwen had quietly climbed to the edge of the rooftop, and Captain America and Wonder Woman were rushing up from the stairwell. After Lin Yi dealt with a group of Chitauri soldiers in midair, his gaze turned to the rooftop. Loki's figure was particularly conspicuous in the blue light beam. He knew that to close the portal, he had to either deal with Loki first or find the portal's control device. Tony, help me contain the warships in the air. I'm going to the rooftop to check it out. Lin Yi said into the communicator. No problem. Tony's voice came through. Be careful, Loki's scepter is powerful. Lin Yi nodded, accelerating his flight towards the rooftop. Passing through the middle floors of the building, he saw several Chitauri soldiers attempting to break into offices. He immediately fired his heat vision, incinerating them. On the rooftop, Gwen had already leapt behind Loki, shooting a web towards Loki's wrist. Loki reacted quickly, swinging his scepter, and blue energy severed the web. Little bug, do you think you can ambush me like that? Gwen didn't back down, firing webs again, entangling Loki's ankles. Captain America and Wonder Woman seized the opportunity to rush up. Captain America slammed his shield towards Loki's chest, and Wonder Woman wrapped her lasso of truth around Loki's body. Let me go. Loki roared, the tip of his scepter emitting a powerful blue light, pushing back Captain America and Wonder Woman, and simultaneously kicking Gwen away. Just then, Lin Yi arrived, grabbing Loki's shoulders and pinning him to the ground. Loki, game over. Loki struggled, thrusting his scepter towards Lin Yi's chest. Lin Yi dodged to the side, simultaneously punching Loki in the face. Loki grunted, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Do you think you can defeat me? Loki sneered, ordering Selvig, activate the portal's backup program, let more fleets in. Selvig mechanically walked to the control device, his fingers rapidly typing on the keyboard. The portal's light grew even more intense, and more Dark Elf warships and Chitauri soldiers poured out. This is bad. Lin Yi's heart tightened. He knew that if this continued, New York would be completely destroyed. He had to close the portal as quickly as possible. Just then, Banner, transformed into the Hulk, punched through a giant, Leviathan, then leapt onto the rooftop, grabbing Loki and lifting him overhead, slamming him hard onto the ground. You made me angry. Loki was dazed by the impact, and the scepter fell from his hand. Lin Yi seized the opportunity, picked up the scepter, and aimed it at Selvig's chest. He remembered that the mind scepter needed to be pointed at the chest to control someone, and releasing control should be the same method. The blue gem pressed against Selvig's chest, and a flash of light appeared. Selvig's eyes gradually cleared, and seeing the chaos before him, he immediately understood. The control device for the portal is over there. I can close it. Selvig quickly walked to the control device and tapped on the keyboard. The portal's light began to dim, gradually shrinking. No. Loki struggled to stop it, but Hulk held him down, unable to move. The Dark Elf warships and Chitauri soldiers, seeing the portal about to close, began to attack frantically, trying to rush in at the last moment. The energy ripples at the edge of the portal grew fainter, the light blue halo flickering intermittently like dying breaths. The Dark Elf warships spewed dark purple flames from their sterns, charging desperately towards the portal. The side of a hull was struck by SHIELD's anti-aircraft gun, blasting open a hideous gash, yet it did not slow down. The Chitauri soldiers' roars pierced through the smoke. These alien warriors, with compound eyes and armored carapaces, some on hoverboards, some clinging to the wreckage of warships, surged towards the portal like a tide. Tony, in his Mark 6 armor, streaked a red afterimage across the sky, his palm repulsors firing continuously, blasting a string of Chitauri soldiers into pieces. Jarvis, calculate portal closing time. Sir, estimated remaining 1 minute 23 seconds. Energy decay rate is accelerating, irreversible. That's enough. Tony gritted his teeth and shouted into the communicator. Diana, Bruce, hold the sides of the portal, don't let any more cannon fodder in. Diana, holding the Godkiller sword, her golden armor shimmering in the gunfire, sliced through the wing of an oncoming Dark Elf warship. Her lasso of truth wrapped around the ankle of another Dark Elf, throwing him to the ground. Received. But these guys are crazy, they're not afraid of death at all. Batman's Batmobile sped across the ground, its roof-mounted machine guns spitting fire, mowing down a group of Chitauri soldiers attempting to surround civilians. Bruce spoke into his wrist communicator. Peter, Gwen, take the civilians to the underground shelter in Central Park. There are reinforced shield fortifications there. Received. Peter's voice was breathless. He had just caught a child falling from a building with his web, while Gwen was nearby using her webs to entangle the Chitauri soldiers' weapons. But there are many elderly people who are immobile and need more help. Just then, the sky suddenly darkened. It turned dark. Everyone instinctively looked up. Above New York, the clouds were forcibly torn apart, and a dozen monstrous warships slowly emerged from the rift. The hulls were made of dark gray metal, their surfaces covered with sharp protrusions, like beasts crawling out of hell. The central warship was particularly massive, over 1,000 meters long. An dark red energy core was embedded in its bow, its cannon barrels 3 times thicker than the shield. Helicourier's main gun, and a familiar symbol was emblazoned on its side. The Kree Empire's skull emblem. What is that? Peter's voice was filled with shock. He stopped, staring at the giant ship, forgetting to activate his web shooters. Lin Yi's super hearing had already captured the roar of the warship's engines. He frowned, staring at the giant ship, and a name instantly flashed in his mind. Ronan. It's Ronan's Dark Aster. Lin Yi shouted into the communicator. He's a Kree extremist with the Power Stone, which can destroy planets. Thanos' man. Before he finished speaking, the Dark Aster's main cannon suddenly glowed with a dark red light. A thick energy beam sliced across the sky, accurately striking the shield. Helicourier that was providing air support. Boom. The violent explosion was deafening. The Helicourier's left wing was instantly pierced by the energy beam, its metal hull curling and melting like paper, emitting thick black smoke. The hull lost balance and began to tilt. Internal explosions continued, and flames spewed from the cracks in the deck. Helicourier damaged. Left wing engine completely inoperable. Nick Fury's voice came through the communicator. All personnel abandon ship. Repeat. All personnel abandon ship. SHIELD agents on the deck jumped onto the hovercraft below. Some agents failed to grab the ropes and fell directly from the Helicourier, dozens of meters high. The Helicourier finally crashed heavily onto a Manhattan street, kicking up a sky full of rubble and dust. Surrounding buildings swayed precariously, and glass shards rained down like a storm. Ding. Detected widespread shock, heroes, civilians, shield caused by the appearance of Ronan's fleet, gaining plus 12,000 shock value, interplanetary threat bonus. Ding. Cumulative shock value reached 214,000 points, Superman gene awakening increased to 42%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength. 115 plus 3. Speed. 115 plus 3. Stamina. 119 plus 3. Reaction. 109 plus 3. Self-healing. 105 plus 3. IQ. 270, unchanged. System evaluation. Host, you've gone big this time. Ronan is here, can Thanos be far behind? Your current strength isn't enough. Quickly accumulate more shock value, or next time Ronan swings his hammer, you'll be flat on your back. Inside the Dark Aster's bridge, Ronan stood before the massive viewing window. He wore the Kree Empire's red battle armor, a hideous scar on his face, and held a war hammer embedded with a purple gem in his right hand. That was the Power Stone from the orb, and though not yet fully activated, it already emitted suffocating energy. Loki. Ronan's voice was cold, echoing over New York through the warship's loudspeakers. Thanos has long known you are useless, unable to conquer even a small blue planet, even needing the Dark Elves' help. Loki stood on the rooftop of Stark Tower, looking at the overwhelming Kree fleet in the sky, his face grim. Ronan, Loki said loudly. I have already opened the portal, and the Chitauri and Dark Elf forces are enough to take Blue Planet. You don't need to steal the credit. Steal credit. Ronan sneered, the purple light on his war hammer flickering. Thanos wants the Tesseract, not this broken planet. Ronan ordered his adjutant beside him. Send out the vanguard, seize the cube. The remaining forces, clear out Blue Planet's resistance, especially those so-called heroes. Yes. The adjutant saluted and turned to relay the order. The hatches on both sides of the Dark Aster opened, and countless small fighters and Kree soldiers poured out, swarming towards the ground like locusts. Their attacks were more ferocious than those of the Chitauri and Dark Elves. The energy cannons fired by the fighters could easily penetrate the steel structures of buildings. The Kree soldiers' weapons could instantly melt metal, and New York's defenses were instantly torn open with a huge gap. On the ground, the screams of civilians rose and fell. Captain America, who had been evacuating civilians, had to turn and confront the rushing Kree soldiers. He raised his shield, blocking an energy cannon, and an instant scorch mark appeared on the shield. This was the first time the vibranium shield had sustained noticeable damage. Steve, look out! Banner's voice came through as he transformed into the Hulk, leaping forward and smashing a Kree soldier flat with one punch. But more Kree soldiers surrounded him, their energy nets entangling the Hulk's limbs, rendering him immobile. Roar! The Hulk roared, trying to break free from the energy nets, but found them tightening, the electricity constantly stimulating his skin. Johnny Blaze transformed into Ghost Rider, the hellfire on his skull blazing. He sped through the streets on his burning motorcycle, his hellfire chains wrapping around a Kree warship, dragging it to the ground where it exploded into a fireball. Eddie. Left. Eddie transformed into Venom, the black symbiote covering his entire body. He leapt up, entangled a diving Kree warship, and tore it apart with brute force. These guys are much tougher than the Chitauri. Venom's voice was hoarse. The Kree warship's hull material was special, even his sharp claws struggled to tear through it. Ding! Detecting intense battle emotions generated by the hero team fighting the Kree fleet, gained 8,000 shock points, high-intensity combat bonus. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 222,000, Superman Gene Awakening increased to 43%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength. 118 plus 3. Speed. 118 plus 3. Endurance. 122 plus 3. Reaction. 112 plus 3. Self-healing. 108 plus 3. IQ. 270, unchanged. System evaluation. Host, hurry up. Can't you see the Hulk is entangled? Can't your heat vision melt metal? Go save the day. If you keep slacking, Tony's armor will be trashed, and then he'll cry and make you pay. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. Activating his flight ability, he shot like lightning towards the Kree soldiers entangling the Hulk. His eyes glowed with heat vision, two orange-red rays precisely hitting the connection points of the energy nets. The metal instantly melted, and the energy nets lost power, collapsing to the ground. Thanks. The Hulk nodded at Lin Yi, then turned and punched an incoming Kree soldier, the immense force instantly deforming the soldier's armor. You're welcome. Lin Yi replied, simultaneously turning to dodge an attack from a Kree warship. He activated Super Breath, blowing out a strong gust of wind that made the warship lose balance and crash into a nearby building. Tony, what are the weaknesses of Ronan's Dark Star's main cannon? Tony's voice came through the comms, breathless. Jarvis is analyzing it. The energy core of that battleship is in the bow, but it has 3 layers of alloy protection. My repulsor blasts can't penetrate it. We need stronger firepower. I'll try. Lin Yi took a deep breath, pushing his strength to the limit, and flew towards the bow of the Dark Star. His speed increased, and the shockwave generated when he broke the sound barrier sent the surrounding Kree warships tumbling. Just then, a fierce burst of gunfire erupted from the direction of the shield base. Lin Yi used his super hearing to catch the commotion there. It was Hydra's forces. They were taking advantage of the chaos, attempting to enter through a breach in the shield base to seize weapons and intelligence inside. Nick, Hydra is attacking the shield base. Lin Yi shouted into the comms. I know. Nick Fury's voice was filled with anger. But General Ross's troops have already stopped them. Ross is awake and free from mind control. Lin Yi turned his head towards the shield base, seeing General Ross in military uniform, holding an assault rifle, standing at the base entrance, commanding soldiers to fight Hydra. Everyone listen. Ross shouted at the soldiers. SHIELD is an ally. Hydra is the enemy. Hold this position, don't let a single Hydra agent in. The soldiers responded in unison, their firepower instantly concentrated, suppressing Hydra's forces on the street outside the base. Hydra's soldiers clearly hadn't expected Ross to suddenly turn on them, and their formation was thrown into disarray, with many killed or captured. It's good that General Ross is awake. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief, turning his attention back to the Dark Star. He had already flown near the bow of the Dark Star, clearly seeing the massive energy core, its dark red light constantly flickering, the energy it contained making him feel a sense of dread. He activated his matter analysis ability, his gaze sweeping over the energy core's protective layer. 3 layers of titanium alloy mixed with Kree metal, with an energy shield on the surface. We need to destroy the shield first, then attack the core. I'll help you destroy the shield. Diana's voice came through as she flew from below, holding the Godkiller sword. My sword can cut through energy shields. Diana flew to Lin Yi's side, raising the Godkiller sword, its blade glowing with golden light. She brought it down with full force against the energy shield. Crack! The golden sword light cut through the shield, leaving a temporary gap. Now, Lin Yi seized the opportunity, his heat vision erupting with full power, the 5000 high temperature rays precisely hitting the energy core's protective layer. The first layer of alloy instantly melted, the second layer began to crack, but the third layer remained intact. The Kree metal's high temperature resistance far exceeded his expectations. No. The heat vision isn't hot enough. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, feeling a slight soreness in his eyes. Prolonged use of heat vision put a great strain on his body. I'm coming. Tony's voice came through as he and Bruce flew over. Tony's armor's shoulder opened, firing 2 large missiles that struck the same spot on the energy core. Bruce, meanwhile, fired a specially designed armor-piercing round from the Batwing, complementing the missile attack. Boom! The shockwave from the explosion pushed the 3 of them back, and a crack finally appeared in the third protective layer of the energy core. But before they could continue their attack, the bow of the Dark Star suddenly turned, and the main cannon once again glowed with dark red light. This time, the target was the underground shelter in Central Park, which was packed with civilians seeking refuge. Oh no! Lin Yi's pupils constricted. He wanted to rush over and block the energy beam, but realized the distance was too great, he wouldn't make it in time. Just at this critical moment, a red figure suddenly stood in front of the shelter. It was Captain America. He held up his vibranium shield, his muscles tensed, ready to receive the attack. Steve, get out of the way! Tony shouted, knowing that even the vibranium shield couldn't withstand the attack from Ronan's main cannon. Captain America didn't move. He watched the approaching energy beam, his eyes resolute. He thought of Peggy, of his comrades in arms during World War II, and of his promise to this world, I will protect this country, protect its people. The energy beam finally struck the shield. Bang! The immense impact forced Captain America to his knees instantly, the cracks on his shield growing larger, and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. But he still didn't give up, gripping the shield tightly with both hands, stubbornly blocking the energy beam, not letting it harm the civilians behind him. Ding! Detecting the strong emotional impact all personnel caused by Captain America's self-sacrificing act to protect the people, gained 15,000 shock points, heroic spirit bonus. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 237,000, Superman gene awakening increased to 44%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength, 121 plus 3. Speed, 121 plus 3. Endurance, 125 plus 3. Reaction, 115 plus 3. Self-healing, 111 plus 3. IQ, 270, unchanged. System evaluation. Host, why are you spacing out? Can't you see Captain America is about to collapse? Go help him. If you don't, you'll lose a reliable teammate. Also, if that Ronin guy really blows up the shelter, your reputation as the Guardian of New York will be completely ruined. Lin Yi snapped back to reality, a strong surge of anger rising within him. He reactivated his flight ability, his speed breaking its limit, and flew towards Captain America. At the same time, he mobilized all the power within his body, condensing an orange energy in his hands. This was the nascent form of a new ability brought by 44% awakening, though still unstable, it contained immense power. Steve, Hold on. Lin Yi's voice cut through the sound of the explosion, reaching Captain America's ears. Captain America looked up, seeing Lin Yi flying towards him, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes. He gritted his teeth, once again exerting more strength, blocking the energy beam. Lin Yi flew to Captain America's side, the orange energy in his hands instantly erupting, striking the side of the energy beam. The collision of the two forces created a shockwave that leveled the surrounding buildings, but the direction of the energy beam was forcibly altered, grazing the edge of the shelter and hitting a distant river, sending up a massive splash. Captain America could no longer hold on, collapsing to the ground, his shield slipping from his hands, covered in cracks. Lin Yi quickly helped him up, checking his injuries. 2 ribs were broken, and his internal organs had slight damage, but luckily there was no life-threatening danger. Thank you, Lin Yi. Captain America said weakly, a faint smile on his lips. Don't talk yet, rest well. Lin Yi handed Captain America over to the arriving medical personnel, then looked at the Dark Star again. Ronan stood on the bridge, coldly staring at him, his eyes filled with killing intent. It seems there's still some decent resistance on this planet. Ronan's voice came through. However, this only excites me more. I will personally crush your hopes and turn this planet into dust. Ronan raised his war hammer, the purple light growing brighter, he was about to act personally. Lin Yi clenched his fists, his heat vision once again flaring in his eyes. The wreckage of the sky carrier was still burning, and huge metal fragments, like broken kites, plummeted towards the Manhattan streets, smashing through the top floors of 3 office buildings. Nick Fury knelt at the entrance of the SHIELD underground base, his left hand pressed against his bleeding shoulder. Just now, the energy cannon shockwave from Ronan's flagship had thrown him back, tearing a hole in his bulletproof vest and scorching his skin with the hot air current. Director. The defensive fortifications on the west side of the base are completely destroyed. Chitauri soldiers have already broken through to the 3rd level. Natasha's voice came through the comms, interspersed with gunshots and the crisp clang of metal. Hawkeye is still holding them off, but Loki's scepter energy is too strong, he can't last much longer. Fury gritted his teeth, stood up, and pulled out a specially made pistol from his waist, loaded with pulse bullets capable of penetrating Chitauri armor. He roared into the comms. Have Coulson take the remaining agents to the civilian evacuation point to support Captain America. You and Hawkeye try to buy as much time as possible, Lin Yi and Tony will be here soon. But Director, Ronan's flagship is still releasing fleets. Our anti-air weapons can't even penetrate their shields. For the first time, panic appeared in Natasha's voice, and a loud bang in the background seemed to indicate that a defensive tower had been destroyed. Fury looked up at the sky. The dark aster hovered over New York like a giant black beast, its hull covered in glowing energy patterns. With each flicker, a dozen small fighters flew out of the hangar doors, diving towards the ground. The roars of the Chitauri soldiers, the screams of the dark elves, and the shouts of the civilians mingled together, weaving a suffocating web of death. Just then, an orange-red beam of light shot from a distance, accurately hitting a Chitauri fighter rushing towards the shield ruins. The fighter instantly melted into a pile of scrap metal, plummeting to the open ground, and the shockwave from the explosion sent nearby debris flying. Fury's eyes lit up. It was Lin Yi. Lin Yi was currently hovering 100 meters in the air, his flight speed stable at 280 kilometers per hour, just enough to avoid the Chitauri fighters' barrage. His super hearing was maxed out, and all sounds within a 10-kilometer radius clearly entered his ears. 3 civilians were trapped in a collapsed supermarket in the East District. Dark Elf Beast units were attacking evacuees at the South Subway Station, and on the West Overpass, Spider-Man was being chased by 2 Chitauri fighters. Gwen, go to the supermarket in the east to rescue the civilians, use your webs to transfer them to the safe house. Lin Yi shouted into the comms, simultaneously activating his material analysis ability. His gaze swept over a Chitauri fighter below, and a set of data immediately appeared before his eyes. Material. Cree alloy 70% plus organic fiber 30%, energy core, 15 centimeters below the cockpit, defensive weakness, armor thickness at the tailfin joint is only 2 millimeters. He immediately adjusted his direction, diving towards that fighter, his eyes glowing orange-red. His top-tier heat vision was fully activated, and the temperature instantly soared to 5,000. The beam accurately hit the fighter's tailfin joint. The alloy instantly melted, the fighter lost balance, and plummeted towards the ground. Lin Yi didn't stop, flying towards another fighter attacking Spider-Man. His heat vision swept over the fighter's energy core, and the fighter exploded in midair. The moment the fragments splattered, he used super breath to blow out a strong wind, pushing the fragments away from the crowd. Ding! Detected Spider-Man Peter Parker, generating strong shock plus gratitude emotions, gained 1800 shock points key hero bonus. Ding! Detected civilians below, evacuation point crowd, generating strong shock plus worship emotions, gained 3500 shock points large-scale group bonus. System evaluation. Host's heat vision is getting more and more accurate. But you almost broke Peter's webs when you blew that strong wind just now. Can't you control the force a bit? Little Spider-Man is still growing, he can't handle such torment. As soon as Lin Yi finished dealing with the fighters, he heard Tony's voice through the comms. Lin Yi, hurry to the top floor of Stark Tower. Ronan's subordinates are protecting Loki as he adjusts the portal. They want to expand the transmission range to let more Dark Elves in. Received. Lin Yi immediately accelerated, his flight speed increasing to 300 kilometers per hour. The shockwave generated when he broke the sound barrier made the glass curtain walls below tremble slightly. He looked towards the top floor of Stark Tower. Loki was holding his scepter, inputting commands into the portal's control console, guarded by 4 Kree warriors. Their armor was covered in energy patterns, and they held long guns capable of firing plasma beams. Tony, I see them. The Kree warriors' armor energy core is in their chest. I'll take them out with heat vision, you seize the control console. Lin Yi said into the comms. No problem. Tony's voice came through, and the thrusters of the Mark 6 armor spewed blue flames as he flew towards the top floor from the other side. Lin Yi dived down, simultaneously locking his heat vision onto the chests of 2 Kree warriors. Orange-red beams of light pierced through the armor, and the Kree warriors groaned, falling to the ground. The remaining 2 warriors immediately turned, pointing their long guns at Lin Yi, and plasma beams whistled towards him. Lin Yi flexibly dodged, simultaneously using super breath to blow a strong wind, pushing one of the warriors into the control console. Tony seized the opportunity to attack from the side, and the armor's palm emitted an energy beam, hitting the other warrior's back. 2 down. Tony landed on the control console, beginning to decrypt Loki's commands. But Ronan's flagship seems to be making a move. Its main cannon is charging, and I don't know where it's targeting. Lin Yi looked up at the Dark Aster. The main cannon in the center of the hull was flashing with purple light, and the energy fluctuations were growing stronger. He immediately activated material analysis, his gaze sweeping over the main cannon. Material. Unknown metal containing ether particle residue, energy type. Dark matter energy, estimated charging time remaining. 3 minutes, attack range covers the entire Midtown Manhattan. Tony's face changed. We have to stop the main cannon from firing within 3 minutes. Lin Yi, can you use heat vision to attack the main cannon's energy core? I'll try. Lin Yi immediately flew towards the Dark Aster. Ronan's voice came through. Loki, if you can't fix the portal, I'll flatten all of New York and then personally retrieve the Tesseract. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, accelerating towards the Dark Aster's main cannon. Just as he was about to activate his heat vision, several black tentacles suddenly attacked from the side, wrapping around his limbs. He looked back and saw Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, holding a longsword embedded with ether particle fragments, his eyes cold. Blue Star Insect, dare to interfere with my plan. At the civilian evacuation point in Midtown Manhattan, Captain America held his shield, blocking the Chitauri soldiers' long guns. The shield was already covered in scratches, and his arm trembled slightly from the continuous impact. Beside him, Wonder Woman held the Godkiller sword, her golden bracelets blocking the dark energy arrows fired by the Dark Elves, and her lasso of truth wrapped around a Chitauri soldier's neck. With a pull, the soldier fell to the ground. Steve, we're almost out of ammo. Diana's voice was weary. Her armor was stained with dark elf blood, and her hair was disheveled. There are still 50 civilians at the evacuation point who haven't been moved, and Coulson's agents haven't arrived yet. Captain America glanced back at the evacuation point, where several medical personnel were helping injured civilians. A little girl, clutching a teddy bear, hid in her mother's arms, her eyes filled with terror. He took a deep breath. After fighting continuously while injured, even with the super soldier serum, he was nearing his limit. He struggled to his feet, raised his shield, and shouted to the surrounding civilians. Don't be afraid, everyone. We will protect you and get you to safety. Just then, a beastly roar echoed. 3 shadow beasts of the dark elves burst out of the alleyway. Their bodies were as agile as black panthers, their claws tipped with venom that could corrode metal, and their eyes glowed with a red light. One of the beasts lunged at the little girl at the evacuation point. Captain America immediately rushed over, blocking the beast's claws with his shield, the venom hissing as it corroded the metal. Diana! Captain America shouted. Diana instantly understood, and the Godkiller sword slashed towards the beast's neck. But the beast was exceptionally agile, dodging the attack and instead using its tail to wrap around Diana's leg, tripping her. Another beast took the opportunity to pounce on Captain America. He blocked it with his shield, but the beast's strength forced his knees to buckle. Bang! A gunshot rang out, and the beast's head was pierced, black blood splattering on the ground. Captain America looked up to see General Ross's troops, rushing towards them, carrying modified energy weapons and firing at the shadow beasts. General Ross walked at the forefront, his military uniform sleeves rolled up. Captain Rogers, I was under Loki's control earlier, my apologies. Now, my troops will assist you in protecting the civilians. Captain America nodded, saying nothing more. Now was not the time to assign blame. He and General Ross together directed the troops to form a defensive line, surrounding the shadow beasts. Diana stood up, wiping the dust from her face, and the lasso of truth flew out again, coiling around the body of the last beast. Captain America seized the opportunity to smash the beast's head with his shield. The beast fell to the ground, no longer moving. I'm leaving the civilians at the evacuation point to you. I'm going to support Natasha. Captain America told General Ross, then ran towards the ruins of S.H.I.E.L.D. Diana followed him, the Godkiller sword gleaming coldly in the sunlight. Under the Brooklyn overpass, Venom opened its fanged mouth and bit off the head of a Chitauri soldier. Black symbiote tendrils whipped like whips at the surrounding soldiers, coiling them together and smashing them heavily against the bridge pillars. Eddie's voice came from inside the symbiote. You alien scum, dare to destroy Annie's new company. I'll tear you all to shreds. Calm down, Eddie. Annie's voice came through the comms. She was evacuating employees in the basement of her new company. Don't let them ambush you. Got it, Eddie said, controlling the symbiote's violent tendencies, merely binding the Chitauri soldiers with tendrils and tossing them onto an empty space nearby. Just then, a flame shot from a distance, incinerating a Chitauri soldier who was about to ambush Venom. Ghost Rider, riding his flaming motorcycle, stopped beside Venom, flames flickering in the eye sockets of his skull. Eddie, Ronin's flagship is charging. We need to stop it. Roxanne said if I help protect New York, she'll go on a date with me again. A date? Eddie's voice was tinged with jealousy. Why do you get to go on dates while I have to keep Annie happy? Because I'm hotter than you, the flaming skull whispered, and the motorcycle's tires spat fire as it sped towards the Dark Aster. Venom was not to be outdone, rapidly climbing along the overpass, the black symbiote like a shadow in the night. As soon as the two approached the underside of the Dark Aster, they encountered Ronin's trusted subordinate, Korath. He held a massive Kree war hammer, its head capable of emitting dark energy waves. Korath saw them and snorted coldly, 2 ants from Blue Earth, daring to challenge the majesty of the Kree Empire. Johnny charged forward on his motorcycle, flames coiling around his war hammer, and smashed it against Korath's war hammer. Bang! The 2 war hammers collided, and an energy shockwave spread out, shattering the overpass's guardrail. Venom attacked from the side, tendrils wrapping around Korath's leg, trying to pull him down. But Korath's strength far exceeded Venom's expectations. He flung Venom against the wall of a nearby building with a powerful swing, and the wall cracked with a spiderweb-like pattern. Eddie! Johnny shouted, simultaneously igniting his motorcycle with hellfire and ramming it into Korath. Korath dodged sideways, and his war hammer slammed towards Johnny's back. Johnny somersaulted in the air, flames blazing in his skull's eye sockets, and fired hellfire chains from his hands, wrapping them around Korath's war hammer. With a powerful pull, Korath lost his balance. Venom seized the opportunity, climbed up from the ground, wrapped tendrils around Korath's neck, and slammed his head against the wall. On the top floor of Wayne Tower, Bruce Wayne was controlling the Batwing, firing missiles at low-flying Chitauri aircraft. The Batwing's screen displayed a 3D map of New York, with red dots representing villains and green dots representing heroes and civilians. Alfred, help me locate the Dark Elves, Command Center. They should be near the portal, Bruce said into the comms. Master Bruce, located. It's in an office building west of Stark Tower. There are 3 Dark Elf mages inside, using magic to reinforce the portal's stability, Alfred's voice came through. Additionally, Dr. Banner's Hulk form has lasted for 120 minutes, and Miss Betty is very worried about him. Bruce looked at a green dot on the screen. Hulk was battling a giant Chitauri monster on the Manhattan Bridge. The monster was dozens of stories tall, its body like an octopus with countless tentacles, each tipped with sharp barbs. Hulk grabbed a tentacle, pulled hard, and ripped it off, black blood splattering on the bridge deck. Banner, I'll distract the monster. You take the opportunity to attack its head. Bruce shouted into the comms, then piloted the Batwing towards the monster, its autocannons firing at the monster's eyes. The monster shrieked in pain, its attention drawn to the Batwing. Hulk seized the chance to leap onto the monster's back, smashing his fists into its head. The monster's head was crushed, and its body crashed heavily onto the bridge deck, making the bridge tremble slightly. Done. Hulk's voice came through. Bruce, Ronin's flagship is still charging. We need to stop it quickly, or all of New York will be gone. I know. Bruce piloted the Batwing towards the Dark Aster. Lin Yi and Tony are already there. We're going to support them. Alfred, prepare to activate the Batwing's ultimate weapon, the electromagnetic pulse cannon. We need to use it to disrupt the Dark Aster's shields. Master Bruce, the electromagnetic pulse cannon requires 3 minutes to charge, and its use will consume 70% of the Batwing's energy, Alfred reminded him. It's fine. As long as we can stop Ronin, it's worth it. Bruce's fingers rapidly operated the control panel. Banner, you go distract the Dark Aster's anti-air fire. I'll take the opportunity to approach the flagship and activate the electromagnetic pulse cannon. Received. Hulk's voice came through. He jumped from the bridge and ran towards the Dark Aster, each step making the ground tremble slightly. In the basement of an office building in downtown Manhattan, Annie was helping the last few employees move to a safe passage. Her new company was on the 12th floor of this office building, but the Chitauri fighter attack had damaged the building's structure, and the 12th floor was already sealed off. She could only lead her employees to evacuate through the basement's safe passage. Everyone, don't push, walk slowly. The evacuation point is just ahead, and heroes will protect us. Annie shouted to her employees, her face calm, but her heart full of worry. Eddie was still fighting outside, and she didn't know how he was doing. Just then, a little girl suddenly started crying. Mommy, I left my teddy bear in the office. I want my teddy bear. The little girl's mother quickly comforted her. Be good, we can buy another teddy bear later, we need to go somewhere safe now. But the little girl didn't listen, broke free from her mother's hand, and ran towards the elevator entrance. Annie's heart tightened, and she immediately chased after her. Little one, don't run. The elevator is out of order, it's very dangerous. As the little girl reached the elevator entrance, she saw a Chitauri soldier rush out of the stairwell, holding a long gun and lunging towards the little girl. Annie's pupils constricted, and she instinctively shielded the little girl. Just then, a web shot out, wrapped around the Chitauri soldier's long gun, and pulled it aside. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, jumped down from the ceiling, punched the soldier in the chest, and the soldier fell to the ground. Miss Annie, are you all right? Peter took off his mask, his face covered in sweat. Eddie asked me to come check on you. He said you were evacuating employees here and was worried you might be in danger. Annie breathed a sigh of relief and stroked the little girl's head. Thank you, Peter. How is Eddie? Is he all right? He's fine, he's fighting Ronin's subordinates with Ghost Rider. Peter smiled. Let me take you to the evacuation point, it's too dangerous here. Meanwhile, on the rooftop of the TV station building, Roxanne was filming the battlefield with her camera. She was a TV reporter, and when the Chitauri soldiers attacked the building earlier, She didn't evacuate but chose to stay on the rooftop to document the war. She wanted more people to know that the heroes were fighting to protect New York. Roxanne. Get down. It's too dangerous here. Johnny's voice came from downstairs. He was riding his burning motorcycle, looking up at Roxanne on the rooftop. Johnny. Roxanne's eyes lit up when she saw him. I'm documenting the battlefield situation. These images are very important. I know, but now is not the time to document. Johnny's voice was anxious. Ronan's main ship is about to fire its main cannon. We need to evacuate quickly. Roxanne hesitated for a moment, then finally turned off her camera and climbed down the fire escape from the rooftop. Johnny quickly stepped forward and supported her. Are you alright? Are you hurt? I'm fine. Roxanne looked at Johnny's burning skull, her heart filled with concern. Can your body still hold on? Don't worry, for you, I can hold on until the war ends. Johnny's voice was firm, and flames shot out from his motorcycle tires. I'll take you to the evacuation point, then come back to continue fighting. The Dark Aster's main cannon had finished charging, and a purple light illuminated the entire New York night sky. Ronan stood in the control room of the main cannon, an arrogant smile on his face. Loki, watch closely, this is the power of the Kree Empire. Today, I will make New York disappear from Earth. Loki stood by, his face complex. He had originally intended to rule Earth, but he never expected Ronan to be so brutal, even wanting to destroy Earth. He looked at the battlefield outside the window. The heroes were still resisting stubbornly, and the civilians were helping each other at the evacuation points. A hint of wavering suddenly arose in his heart. Ronan, you can't do this. Loki suddenly spoke. Earth still has value, destroying it won't benefit us. Loki, haven't you recognized reality yet? Ronan sneered. Thanos wants the Tesseract. The survival of Earth is not important to him. If you dare to stop me again, I will kill you first. Loki tightened his grip on his scepter, but said nothing more. He knew he was no match for Ronan. Just then, a loud bang came from outside the control room. The metal door was blown open, and Lin Yi rushed in. His clothes were torn, and he had several wounds on his body, but his self-healing ability was rapidly repairing them. Ronan, stop. Ronan turned around and looked at Lin Yi, his eyes filled with disdain. Earthling insect, do you think you can stop me? Lin Yi didn't waste words, activated his heat vision, and shot it towards the main cannon's energy core. But Ronan was prepared. He pressed a button on the control panel, and an energy shield blocked the heat vision. It's useless. My shield can block any attack from Earth. Lin Yi frowned, activated material analysis, and scanned the shield again. Material. Kree energy shield containing ether energy. Weakness. The shield generator is 3 meters below the main cannon. It needs to attack both the generator and the energy core at the same time to break it. Tony, I need your help. Lin Yi shouted into the communicator. The shield generator is 3 meters below the main cannon. You attack the generator, I attack the energy core. We move at the same time. Received. Tony's voice came through. The Mark 6 armor's thrusters spewed blue flames, and he rushed into the control room from the other side, firing an energy beam towards the shield generator. Ronan roared and raised his Kree war hammer, smashing it towards Tony. Tony deftly dodged, and the energy beam hit the shield generator, causing a crack to appear in the shield. Lin Yi seized the opportunity, fully activated his heat vision, and shot it towards the energy core. The orange-red light penetrated the crack and hit the energy core. The core emitted a piercing explosion, and the main cannon's purple light began to dim. No! Ronan roared furiously, raising his war hammer and smashing it towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi dodged, and at the same time, used his super breath to blow a strong wind, sending Ronan crashing into the control panel. Tony took the opportunity to hit Ronan's back with an energy beam. Ronan fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of purple blood. Kree blood. Ding! Detected. Ronan, Kree Empire Commander, generating strong shock plus anger emotions, gained 5,000 shock points. Top villain bonus. Ding! Detected. Loki, Asgardian Prince, generating strong shock plus wavering emotions, gained 4,200 shock points. Key villain bonus. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 215,000. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 42%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength, 115 plus 3, Speed, 115 plus 3 endurance, 119 plus 3 reaction, 109 plus 3 self-healing, 105 plus 3 IQ, 270 unchanged. System evaluation. Host finally hurt Ronan. But you almost broke the control panel in the control room when you blew the strong wind just now. Tony still has to spend time repairing it, can't you be more careful? Also, Loki seems to be wavering, you can try to win him over, maybe you can get an extra helper. Just as Lin Yi was about to go forward and subdue Ronan, he heard Captain America's voice from the communicator. Lin Yi. Tony. Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, has obtained the ether. He is preparing to release dark energy in downtown Manhattan, and the civilian evacuation points are in danger. Lin Yi and Tony exchanged glances, both seeing the anxiety in each other's eyes. Ronan is yours, I'll go stop Malekith. Lin Yi said to Tony, then turned and rushed out of the control room, increasing his flight speed to 300 kilometers per hour, flying towards downtown Manhattan. Tony looked at Ronan lying on the ground and smiled helplessly. It seems today's troubles are not over yet. He took out special handcuffs, cuffed Ronan's hands, and then said into the communicator, Bruce, Banner, come support me, I need someone to guard Ronan. In the square in downtown Manhattan, Malekith was brandishing a longsword imbued with the power of the ether, swinging it towards the sky. Dark energy was released from the longsword, forming a black vortex. The surrounding buildings began to corrode, glass curtain walls turned black, and metal railings started to melt. Ha ha ha. This place will soon be swallowed by dark energy, becoming a new home for the Dark Elves. Malekith's voice was filled with madness. The Asgardians couldn't stop us, and neither can you Blue Planet people. Civilians at the evacuation point began to panic. Some tried to flee but were caught by the dark energy vortex, pulled towards its center. Captain America held up his shield, blocking the erosion of the dark energy. Diana's lasso of truth wrapped around a civilian being pulled in, pulling him back. We have to stop him from releasing dark energy. But the vortex's pull is too strong, we can't get close. Captain America shouted into his communicator. I'm coming. Lin Yi's voice came through as he swooped down, his heat vision firing at Malekith's longsword. However, the dark energy formed a barrier, blocking the heat vision and preventing it from penetrating. Ding. Detected intense shock plus anxiety from Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, gaining plus 4,800 shock points, top tier hero bonus. Ding. Detected intense shock plus fear from civilians at the evacuation point, gaining plus 6,200 shock points, large scale group bonus. System evaluation. Your heat vision was actually blocked, host. It seems dark energy is more powerful than you imagined. Why don't you try blowing away the vortex with your super breath? But don't blow the civilians in, or you'll become a villain. Lin Yi didn't give up. He activated his microscopic vision to observe the particle structure of the dark energy. The gravitational force between dark energy particles is very strong, but if we interfere with high-frequency sound waves, it should be able to disrupt their structure. Tony, can your suit emit high-frequency sound waves? Yes. But it needs to be close to the center of the vortex for the sound waves to be effective. Tony's voice came through, and the Mark 6 suit's thrusters spewed blue flames as it flew towards the center of the vortex. Malekith saw Tony and snorted coldly, swinging his longsword. A wave of dark energy shot towards Tony. Tony dodged it, simultaneously activating the suit's high-frequency sound wave device. A piercing sound wave spread out, and the rotation speed of the dark energy vortex began to slow, its particle structure loosening. Lin Yi. Now. While you can. Tony shouted into the communicator. Lin Yi immediately activated his heat vision, firing at Malekith's longsword. This time, the heat vision penetrated the dark energy barrier, hitting the hilt of the longsword. The ether detached from the longsword and fell to the ground. The dark energy vortex lost its energy source and began to dissipate, and the surrounding corrosion also stopped. Malekith's face changed dramatically. He tried to pick up the ether but was ensnared by Diana's lasso of truth. Captain America seized the opportunity, rushing forward and smashing his shield into Malekith's chest, knocking him back. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to retrieve the ether, he heard Natasha's voice through the communicator. Everyone, attention. The portal is expanding again. Loki, somehow, has regained control of Dr. Selvig. They want to bring in more Chitauri soldiers and dark elves. Lin Yi looked up at Stark Tower. The portal's light grew brighter and brighter. More Chitauri aircraft and dark elf warships surged out of the portal, flying towards the ground. He clenched his fist and spoke into the communicator. Everyone, listen up. Split into 2 teams. One team goes to Stark Tower to stop Loki, and the other stays on the ground to protect civilians. We must close the portal before it fully expands. The heroes' voices came through the communicator. Understood. In the night sky of New York, the flames of war still burned. The heroes split into 2 teams, flying towards the new battlegrounds. Lin Yi knew that the second half of this war had just begun, and he was ready for it. The Dark Star's main cannon recharged again, and a purple beam of energy, like the scythe of death, slashed towards Stark Tower. Tony's Mark 6 suit had only 17% energy left. He exerted all his strength to deploy an energy shield, but it was instantly shattered by the beam. The suit's left arm armor completely detached, revealing a bleeding wound underneath. Jarvis, is there any backup energy? Tony's voice was breathless as he looked at the chaotic streets below. Chitauri soldiers were advancing over the corpses of civilians, and dark elf warships weaved between buildings. Each bombardment could collapse an entire structure. Sir, backup energy is depleted. Suit core temperature is too high, initiating shutdown. Jarvis's voice was filled with static. The suit's faceplate automatically opened, and Tony's forehead was covered in cold sweat, his vision starting to blur. Just then, a green figure leapt from the rubble. Banner could no longer control the Hulk. His green muscles bulged, and he roared as he charged towards a Dark Star aircraft, smashing it into scrap metal with a single punch. But the Hulk's sanity was rapidly fading. He began to destroy indiscriminately, even throwing punches at nearby SHIELD agents. Betty screamed and rushed towards the Hulk, but she was hit in the shoulder by a Chitauri soldier's energy beam and fell to the ground. Betty. Banner's pupils instantly constricted, and his sanity briefly returned. He turned and tore the soldier who attacked Betty in half, but he didn't notice the sneak attack from Malekith, the Dark Elf leader, behind him. A dark energy dagger pierced the Hulk's back, and green blood gushed out. The Hulk grunted and fell to the ground, his body slowly shrinking, reverting to Banner's form. Banner. Lin Yi's voice came from the sky. He was using his heat vision to melt the engine of a Dark Elf warship. Seeing Banner injured, he immediately accelerated towards him. His 41% awakening level allowed his flight speed to exceed 350 km per hour, leaving an orange afterimage behind him. He landed beside Banner, placing his hands on Banner's wound. His super self-healing ability operated at full power. A faint golden light enveloped the wound, and the green blood gradually stopped. Ding! Detected intense gratitude from Dr. Banner, near-death state, gaining plus 3000 shock points, key figure bonus. Ding! Detected intense shock plus reliance from surrounding agents and civilians, gaining plus 5000 shock points, group bonus. Ronan stood on the bridge of the Dark Star, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he watched the chaos below. He pulled out the Tesseract from his embrace, and purple energy surged in his palm. Loki, do you see? Is this what you call ruling Earth? It's just a joke. What Thanos wants is never a broken planet, but the power of the Tesseract. Loki was held against the bridge railing by Ronan's subordinates. His scepter had long been taken, and his face was covered in blood. But hearing Ronan's words, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He was never one to willingly be subordinate to others. Ronan's arrogance had just given him an opportunity to turn the tables. Ronan, do you think Thanos will tolerate your ambition? Loki's voice was hoarse. You are merely his pawn. When he gets the cube, you'll be the first to die. Ronan snorted coldly, raising his hand to kill Loki. Just then, Loki suddenly broke free from his subordinate's restraints, pulled out a hidden dagger from his boot, and lunged at Ronan's back. The dagger was coated with an Asgardian magical potion, capable of temporarily suppressing the Tesseract's energy. Ronan was caught off guard and stabbed by the dagger. The Tesseract's energy in his palm instantly became chaotic, purple light radiating in all directions, destroying the bridge's control panel. You're asking for death. Ronan roared, spun around, and punched Loki, sending him flying. Loki crashed into the railing, spitting out a mouthful of blood, but his objective had been achieved. The Tesseract's energy fluctuated, the Dark Aster's main cannon lost its power supply, and the energy beam that was about to be fired abruptly ceased. Lin Yi. Now! Loki shouted downwards, knowing that only Lin Yi's power could completely destroy the Tesseract's control. Lin Yi heard Loki's shout and immediately looked up at the Dark Aster's bridge. He activated his material analysis ability, his gaze sweeping over the Tesseract. Object. Tesseract Space Stone Container Composition. Unknown Cosmic Metal 90%, Space Energy 10%. Weakness. Energy core at the center of the cube. Sustained attack with temperatures above 5000 degrees Celsius will temporarily deactivate it. Tony, cover me. Lin Yi shouted into the communicator, pushing off the ground with both feet, using his flight ability to shoot towards the Dark Aster's bridge. Tony, enduring his injuries, activated the remaining weapons on his armor. All shoulder missiles launched, accurately striking the Dark Aster's flank, drawing the attention of Ronan's subordinates. Lin Yi flew outside the bridge window, activating his top-tier heat vision at full power. Two orange-red rays, temperature 5000 degrees Celsius, shot from his eyes, precisely hitting the Tesseract in Ronan's hand. Cracks began to appear on the Tesseract's surface, purple energy continuously overflowed, and Ronan's palm was scorched by the energy, letting out a painful roar. No! My Tesseract! Ronan frantically waved the Tesseract, trying to shake off Lin Yi's heat vision. But Lin Yi's flight ability was extremely agile. He flew around the bridge, his heat vision constantly locked onto the Tesseract. Just as the cracks on the Tesseract were about to spread to its center, Ronan suddenly threw the Tesseract towards the street below. He wanted the Tesseract to explode among the civilians, making all of New York perish with him. Oh no! Lin Yi's heart tightened, and he immediately accelerated into a dive, trying to catch the Tesseract before it hit the ground. However, Ronan's subordinates fired energy beams at him. Lin Yi's right arm was hit, the skin at the wound instantly carbonized, and blood streamed out. Self-healing ability activated, wound expected to heal in 10 seconds, the system notification sounded, but Lin Yi knew he didn't have 10 seconds. The Tesseract was already less than 100 meters from the ground, below was a group of evacuating civilians, including several children. Ah! Lin Yi roared, and the Superman gene within him suddenly erupted. He could feel the energy in his blood surging wildly, and the surrounding air seemed to provide him with strength. Ding! Host detected in a life or death crisis, triggering gene potential burst. Accumulated shock value reached 250,000 points, Superman gene awakening degree increased to 45%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength 127 plus 15, Speed 127 plus 15, Endurance 131 plus 15, Reaction 121 plus 15, Self-Healing 117 plus 15, Intelligence 270, unchanged. New ability unlocked. Super Shield, Elementary, conform an energy shield on the body surface, resisting temperatures below 5000 degrees Celsius and impacts below 100 tons, duration 1 minute, cooldown 5 minutes. Lin Yi activated the Super Shield, his body covered in a faint golden glow. He ignored the energy beam attacks, his speed increased again, instantly catching up to the Tesseract, and firmly hugging it with both hands. But the Tesseract's energy was already out of control, purple light overflowed from between his fingers, scorching his palms. Hold on. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, holding the Tesseract in his arms, and flew towards Stark Tower, where Tony had prepared an energy containment device. Ronan saw Lin Yi catch the Tesseract, and his eyes were bloodshot with rage. He grabbed a dark energy warblade from the weapon rack on the bridge, leapt off the Dark Aster, and chased after Lin Yi. Give me back the Tesseract. Ronan's speed was extremely fast, the dark energy on his warblade could easily cut through steel, and he slashed at Lin Yi's back. Watch out! Diana's voice came, and she, holding the Godkiller sword, blocked Ronan's attack from the side. Lin Yi, quickly go seal the Tesseract. Leave this to me. Diana's golden armor was already covered in scratches, but her eyes remained firm. The Godkiller sword clashed with the dark energy warblade, sending sparks flying. Lin Yi nodded, accelerating his flight towards the top floor of Stark Tower. Tony had already prepared the containment device there. A cubical container made of vibranium and new elements, capable of temporarily suppressing the space stone's energy. Lin Yi placed the tesseract into the container, and Tony immediately activated the device. A light blue energy shield enveloped the container, and the tesseract's purple glow gradually weakened. Just then, the system notification sounded again. Ding! Host successfully prevented the tesseract's explosion, saving millions of civilians, gaining plus 10,000 shock value world-class contribution bonus. Accumulated shock value reached 280,000 points, Superman gene awakening degree increased to 50%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength 142 plus 15, Speed 142 plus 15, Endurance 146 plus 15, Reaction 136 plus 15, Self-Healing 132 plus 15, Intelligence 270, unchanged. New ability unlocked. Space Jump, Elementary, can instantly teleport within a 10 km radius. Each jump consumes 10% stamina, cooldown 1 minute. Lin Yi felt the surging power within him and tried to activate Space Jump. With a thought, he instantly moved from the top floor of Stark Tower to the Dark Aster's bridge. Ronan's subordinates were trying to repair the control panel, and seeing Lin Yi suddenly appear, they were stunned. Lin Yi didn't waste words, punching them one by one, sending them all flying. The metal floor of the bridge was as fragile as paper under his fists, each impact left a deep crater. Lin Yi found Loki on the bridge, leaning against the corner, his face pale. "Are you alright?" Lin Yi asked, reaching out to help him up. Loki shook his head. "I never thought I'd be saved by a Blue Star native." He paused, then added, "Ronan's dark energy warblade is highly poisonous. Diana won't last much longer, we need to help her." Lin Yi nodded, taking Loki and activating Space Jump, instantly appearing beside Diana. At this moment, Diana had been pushed to the brink by Ronan. Her godkiller sword was severed by the dark energy warblade. Her golden bracelets also showed cracks, and her shoulder was gashed by the warblade, blood staining her armor. "Diana!" Lin Yi shouted, leaping forward, and punching Ronan's back. Ronan felt the attack from behind and immediately turned to block. But Lin Yi's 50% awakened strength far exceeded his imagination. Fist collided with warblade, and the dark energy warblade instantly shattered. Ronan was sent staggering backward, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Impossible. How can your strength be so great?" Ronan looked at Lin Yi in disbelief, his eyes filled with fear. "Because you messed with the wrong person," Lin Yi said coldly. He activated Space Jump again, appearing in front of Ronan, grabbing Ronan's shoulders with both hands, and lifting him up. "You destroyed this city, harmed innocent people, and now, it's time to pay the price." Lin Yi threw Ronan towards the Dark Aster, simultaneously activating his heat vision. 2 rays precisely hit Ronan's body. Ronan let out a horrific scream, his body gradually melting under the high temperature, finally turning into a pile of ashes. Having dealt with Ronan, Lin Yi turned to Diana, offering her a bottle of medical spray. "Are you okay?" Diana took the spray and applied it to her wound, a grateful smile on her face. "Thank you, Lin Yi. If it weren't for you, I might already be dead." Just then, a roar came from the sky. Seeing Ronan dead, the Dark Elf warships began to retreat frantically, and the Chitauri soldiers also lost their command, becoming chaotic. However, some stubborn Chitauri soldiers began to attack the shelters where civilians were gathered, attempting one last struggle. "Peter, Gwen, go protect the shelters." Lin Yi shouted into the communicator. "Tony, Banner has recovered. Take him to repair the defense system of Stark Tower. Captain America, Diana, let's go clear out the remaining enemies." Received. Everyone responded simultaneously. Peter and Gwen swung out webs in midair, which wove into a giant net, blocking the Chitauri soldiers' attack. Tony took Banner to the underground laboratory of Stark Tower. Banner used his scientific knowledge to quickly repair the defense system, and a pale blue energy shield once again enveloped the tower. Captain America and Diana led SHIELD agents in street-to-street close combat with the Chitauri soldiers. Although Captain America's shield was damaged, it could still block energy beams, while Diana used the hilt of her broken sword to strike down enemies again and again. The most unexpected thing was the counterattack from the civilians. The citizens, previously protected by the heroes, spontaneously organized themselves, grabbing baseball bats, fire axes, and even frying pans, and charged towards the Chidori soldiers. A teenager named Tommy used his father's hunting rifle to kill a Chidori soldier who was attacking an old man. A couple sprayed the Chidori soldiers with a fire hose, incapacitating them. Even the bar owner from earlier, pushing a cart full of alcohol, threw it at the enemies, and the burning alcohol trapped them in flames. Lin Yi looked at the civilians below, his eyes filled with emotion. He activated his super hearing and could hear the civilians' shouts. The heroes protected us, now it's our turn to protect them. New York is ours, we can't let aliens destroy it. Ding. Detected large-scale spontaneous civilian counterattack, generating strong courage plus unity emotions, gaining 8,000 points of shock value, human collective will bonus. Accumulated shock value reached 298,000 points, Superman gene awakening increased to 51%. Just as the battle in New York was gradually becoming clear, an explosion suddenly occurred in the direction of the SHIELD base. The remaining forces of Hydra, seeing that the main Allied forces were in New York City, attempted to raid SHIELD's armory to seize advanced weapons. But they didn't expect that General Ross's troops were already waiting there. General Ross stood at the entrance of the base, having already broken free from Loki's Mind Stone control. Hydra, do you think I would still be controlled by Loki? General Ross's voice was booming. I was deceived before and almost destroyed SHIELD. Now, I will atone for my mistakes. The leader of Hydra was a baron named Strucker, dressed in a black trench coat and holding an energy gun. Ross, do you think your troops can stop us? SHIELD is already overwhelmed, New York will soon be destroyed, and this world will eventually belong to Hydra. General Ross snorted coldly and raised his hand to signal. The soldiers behind him raised their guns, aiming at Hydra's forces. I admit, I've done many wrong things before. I tried to capture Banner, tried to weaponize super soldiers. I thought it was for the country, but I was wrong. General Ross said, true protection is not depend on weapons, but depend on the human heart. Today, the civilians of New York taught me that. Baron Strucker chuckled disdainfully, pulled the trigger, and an energy beam shot towards General Ross. General Ross did not dodge, he closed his eyes, awaiting death. He felt this was the punishment he deserved. But just then, an orange figure suddenly appeared, blocking the energy beam with a super shield. General Ross, it's not time for atonement yet. Lin Yi's voice came. He activated spatial jump, appeared in front of Baron Strucker, and punched him away. Hydra's ambition ends today. Baron Strucker struggled to get up, wanting to activate the bomb in his hand to perish with SHIELD. But Betty suddenly rushed over, stabbed his wrist with a dagger, and the bomb fell to the ground. Banner arrived shortly after, using the energy inhibitor he developed to subdue Baron Strucker and all Hydra soldiers. General Ross, Banner walked up to Ross, extending his hand, let bygones be bygones. Now, we should work together to protect this world. General Ross looked at Banner's outstretched hand, his eyes filled with guilt. He trembled as he shook Banner's hand. Banner, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Say no more, General. Banner smiled. Now, we have more important things to do, clear the rubble of New York and help the injured civilians. General Ross nodded, then turned and shouted to his troops. All personnel listen up. Immediately proceed to New York City to assist with civilian evacuation and repair damaged buildings. Anyone who disobeys orders will face court-martial. The soldiers responded in unison and set off for New York City. As the sky grew light, the battle for New York finally came to a complete end. All Dark Elf warships retreated, all Chitauri soldiers were eliminated, the remaining Hydra forces were captured, and the Tesseract was resealed in SHIELD's underground base. On the streets, the heroes sat exhausted on the rubble, bandaging each other's wounds. Tony's armor was completely damaged, and he leaned on Captain America's shoulder, drinking a beer. I can't believe we actually won. Captain America smiled, wiping blood from his shield. We were never fighting alone. He looked at the civilians not far away. They were clearing debris from the streets, medical personnel were treating the injured, and children were searching for surviving pets among the ruins, a long-lost smile on their faces. Lin Yi and Gwen sat in a surviving car, Gwen leaning on Lin Yi's shoulder, her eyes full of weariness yet also relief. Lin Yi, we did it. New York is safe. Lin Yi gently stroked Gwen's hair. His super hearing could pick up the sounds of the entire city. The cries of babies, the laughter of old people, the whispers of lovers, the playful shouts of children, these sounds intertwined, forming the most beautiful symphony. Ding! Detected victory in the Battle of New York, human civilization preserved, gaining 15,000 points of shock value, civilization level contribution bonus. Accumulated shock value reached 313,000 points, Superman gene awakening increased to 55%. New ability unlocked. Energy absorption, primary, can absorb external energy, such as solar energy, electrical energy, energy beams, and convert it into personal power, with no absorption limit. Absorption speed depends on energy intensity. Just then, Loki walked up to Lin Yi. He had regained the demeanor of an Asgardian prince, though the bloodstains on his face hadn't been completely wiped away. Lin Yi, thank you for this. Loki said, if it weren't for you, I might have died at Ronan's hands. Lin Yi nodded, saying nothing more. He knew that Loki's nature wasn't bad, just blinded by ambition. Now, having experienced this great battle, he should have understood what was truly important. Not far away, Eddie and Anne were embracing. Anne looked at the scars on Eddie's body, her eyes full of heartache. From now on, no more fighting so desperately. Eddie smiled, hugging Anne tightly. Don't worry, I'll be fine. And I promise you, I'll spend more time with you from now on and never make you angry again. Venom's voice came from Eddie's body. Miss Anne, I'll keep an eye on Eddie and won't let him miss any more dates. Anne was amused by Venom's words and gently patted Eddie's back. All right, let's go help the medical staff. Johnny and Roxanne also walked together. Roxanne looked at the flame marks on Johnny's body and chided. No more fighting in Ghost Rider form from now on, it's too dangerous. Johnny smiled, holding Roxanne's hand. Don't worry, I promise you, I'll be on time, I'll protect myself, and I'll never make you worry again. The sun gradually rose, its golden light spilling onto the streets of New York, dispelling the darkness and blood of the night. The heroes stood up and walked towards Stark Tower. There, Tony had prepared a simple celebration party, without luxurious decorations or expensive food, just beer, burgers, and everyone's laughter. On the top floor of Stark Tower, Tony raised his beer bottle and shouted to everyone. To New York. To Blue Star. To all of us. Cheers. Cheers. Darling, you have no idea what's possible. Hela Odinsdottir, Thor, Ragnarok 2017. Asgard. Golden sunlight streamed over the arch of the Bifrost, illuminating the spires of Valhalla. In the square before the palace, Asgardian soldiers were undergoing their morning drills. The clang of their armor as they wielded runic battle axes interwove with the sound of horns in the morning breeze, forming the unchanging morning symphony of this divine realm for 1,000 years. Thor stood at the highest point of the palace, Mjolnir glowing with faint blue lightning in his hand. But at this moment, his brows were tightly furrowed, his gaze fixed on the closed, Odin's slumber chamber at the end of the square. Your Highness. Heimdall's voice came from behind him. The gatekeeper of Asgard still wore his dark gold armor, and the cosmic stars in his eyes seemed dimmer than usual. His Majesty has been in the chamber for 3 days now, neither eating nor drinking. He only allows me to bring him spring water once a day. Thor turned around and looked at Heimdall. How is father's condition? I tried to go in and see him yesterday, but he blocked the door with magic. Heimdall shook his head, his voice tinged with worry. His Majesty's aura is growing weaker, as if he's deliberately suppressing something. He told me something yesterday. The twilight of Asgard is not an invasion from without, but a consequence of our own past. I don't understand what he meant, but I can feel that His Majesty is afraid. Thor's heart sank. He knew Odin. The king of Asgard had fought battles his entire life, from the frost giants of the 9 realms to the dark elves, never once showing fear. What could possibly make him afraid? Just then, the door to the chamber suddenly opened with a creak, and an ancient, weak aura drifted out. Odin emerged slowly, leaning on an oak staff. His white hair was sparser than before, and the wrinkles on his face were like dried riverbeds. His single eye, once capable of piercing the cosmos, had now lost its former brilliance, leaving only a murky weariness. Father. Thor rushed forward, wanting to support Odin, but was gently pushed away. I'm not so old that I need help walking. Odin's voice was hoarse, but still carried the authority of a king. Thor, accompany me to the observatory. I have something to tell you. Asgard's observatory was built at the highest point of the divine realm. Its dome was made of transparent Asgardian crystal, offering a clear view of the stars of the 9 realms. Odin walked under the dome, looking up at the distant planet emitting a dark red glow. Hela's place of sealed. Thor, do you know the history of Asgard? Odin suddenly spoke, his voice carrying a distant, ancient weariness. People believe that Asgard's glory was won by my conquest of the 9 realms, but they don't know that there was another who fought alongside me in the beginning. Thor was stunned. Father, who are you speaking of? Is it one of the heroes on the statues in the pantheon? No. Odin shook his head, a complex emotion flashing in his eyes. It was Hela, my daughter, your sister. Sister. Thor was completely shocked. He had never heard that name before. You never mentioned her to me. Where is she? I sealed her in hell. Odin's voice deepened. In those days, Hela and I conquered the 9 realms together. Her power was even greater than mine. The Necrosword in her hand could cleave stars. But as the conquests continued, her ambition grew larger. She was not content with ruling the 9 realms, she wanted to conquer the entire universe. To stop her, I had no choice but to unite with the elders of Asgard to seal her in hell, and I used my divine power to suppress her for 1,000 years. Thor looked at Odin, unable to believe his ears. Why did you hide this from me? And Loki, does he know about this? Loki doesn't know. Besides me and Heimdall, no one knows of Hela's existence. Odin sighed, coughed a few times, and a trace of golden blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. I originally thought I could suppress her forever, but even gods have an end to their lives. Now, the seal has begun to loosen. Then what do we do now? Thor asked. We can reinforce the seal, or find a way to seal her again. Odin shook his head. It's too late. My time is running out. Once I die, my divine power will completely disappear, and Hela will break free from the seal and return to Asgard. She will seek revenge, she will destroy everything I have built. The twilight of Asgard is upon us. Thor tried to say something else, but Odin suddenly clutched his chest, his body trembling violently. His skin began to turn transparent, and golden divine power emanated from his pores, merging with the surrounding stars. Thor, remember, Asgard is not a place, but a people. Odin's voice grew fainter. Protect your people, carry on the will of Asgard, and don't let Hela's ambition destroy everything. Before his words finished, Odin's body transformed into countless golden specks of light, dissipating under the dome of the observatory. The sky above Asgard suddenly darkened. The formerly clear day was instantly covered by dark clouds, and strong winds whipped up debris in the square. The sounds of the soldiers' training abruptly ceased. Everyone looked up at the sky, their eyes filled with fear. They knew that the god of Asgard had fallen. The moment Odin fell, the energies of the 9 realms began to fluctuate violently. Deep within Hell, the black palace where Hela was imprisoned suddenly trembled. The golden runes covering the palace gates began to peel away, and spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the once sturdy stone doors. Inside the palace, a woman in black armor slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were pure black, like the deepest abyss of hell, and the Necrosword in her hand glowed with a dark red light. Father, you finally died. Hela's voice carried a cold laugh. She stood up, her black skirt sweeping over the bones on the ground, the remains of hell creatures that had tried to approach the palace over the millennia. 1,000 years of imprisonment, finally it can be undone. Asgard, I'm back. She raised her hand, gripped the Necrosword, and swung it towards the stone door. Dark red energy surged out like a tide. The stone door was instantly split in half, and shattered rock flew everywhere. Hela walked out of the palace step by step. The sky of hell began to rain, and black raindrops fell on her armor, yet could not dampen it in the slightest. In the shadows behind her, countless skeletal soldiers slowly rose, her army of the dead from her conquests of the 9 realms, sealed in hell for 1,000 years, now re-emerging with her awakening. My legion. Hela looked at the dense ranks of skeletal soldiers behind her, a hint of fanaticism flashing in her eyes. Follow me home, and reclaim everything that is ours. The spatial barrier between Hell and Asgard began to twist, and a black rift appeared in the sky above Asgard. Hela, leading her army of the dead, slowly emerged from the rift. Dark red energy enveloped all of Asgard. In the square before Valhalla, the soldiers raised their weapons, but their bodies trembled. They could feel the overwhelming power emanating from Hela, a pressure that came from death itself. People of Asgard. Hela's voice echoed throughout the divine realm. I am Hela, daughter of Odin, the rightful heir to Asgard. Your king is dead. Now, submit to me, or die. Thanks for watching.